Chapter 52:19. After Che Ruotian's video, there were videos of other women who had suffered the same fate in the He family village. Among these women, there were some who were very happy. But even if they were happy, it was hard for them to let go of what had happened in the past. With Che Ruotian taking the lead, they were willing to step forward. At the same time, Zhuo Chengfei released the photos he had taken in the past. Capture. Zhui found a lot of information about the He family village. It could be said that the information he found and the witnesses killed the He family village. They didn't even have a chance to make a comeback. Things happened too quickly. Before anyone could react, the He family's mother and son were arrested. The He family village's people weren't arrested because no victims had the courage to sue them. Also, there were many flaws in the law back then. Now that more than 20 years had passed, the law had changed. In the League of Legends, if someone sued the He family village's people, there would naturally be someone to take care of it. They thought that there was sufficient evidence. Those people didn't cover up what they had done back then and were arrested very quickly. Those who had been arrested had not only committed rape, but had also committed murder. The netizens were only interested in the entertainment industry and rich families. They didn't expect such a bloody truth to be revealed. At first, they sympathized with Che Ruotian's experience. Then, they were shocked when the police reported that countless bones had been dug up near the He family village's old site. Not only were there the bodies of newborn girls, but there were also women who had been abducted from the outside. The He family's mother and son were caught in jail. They didn't know what to do. They were terrified. Under the police's serious interrogation, they didn't even last a minute before they confessed everything. The police asked them why they hid the truth and spread rumors that Che Ruotian had abandoned her child. "Old madam," he said, "that woman took away my boy. I won't let her have a good life." He Dijin said, "That's right. After that, I married another woman and gave birth to 2 children. If it wasn't for that woman, I wouldn't even have a child." The situation had changed too quickly. Even if He Xiaomi's team was prepared, they couldn't stop it. This matter wasn't about public opinion anymore. It was about a crime. In this situation, they could only make He Xiaomi cut ties with the He family as soon as possible and tell the fans that she didn't know anything. "What do you think?" The manager asked He Xiaomi. "You were still young then. Later on, there were changes in the village. You didn't know about those things at all. It was because of the He family's mother and son's lies that you believed that you were abandoned by your biological mother. You've always been concerned about this matter." He Xiaomi looked at the manuscript and her fingers trembled slightly. She nodded gently. "Yes, I want to see them," He Xiaomi said in a low voice. "I want to ask them why they lied to me." The agent's eyes lit up. "Okay, I'll arrange it for you right away." After He Xiaomi visited the He family's mother and son, someone revealed that He Xiaomi went to see the He family's mother and son. It was said that she went to ask them why they lied to her, saying that her mother abandoned her and didn't leave the village. At the same time, there were also people who revealed that He Xiaomi was able to live well because the country had given a large amount of subsidies to the family with a daughter in the village. Otherwise, He Xiaomi would be in a terrible state now. Chapter 52:20. Some even said that the 2 of them lied to He Xiaomi and treated her as a money-making machine. Some said that the 2 of them lived a luxurious life. They often invited the villagers to stay at He Xiaomi's house for half a year. Old madam He often bought gold for herself. He Dijin either gambled or went to prostitutes. All these proved that the mother and son treated He Xiaomi as a money-making machine. Poor He Xiaomi. She thought that this was family and tried to protect the 2 of them. The series of revelations could be considered as diverting the trouble away from He Xiaomi, leaving her completely out of the picture. Of course, Su Qing contributed a lot to these news. In his opinion, He Xiaomi was deceived. She was so young at that time. How could she know that the mother and son were evil? Snatch and seize. Su Qing finally felt relieved when he saw all kinds of heartache about He Xiaomi online. At this time, He Xiaomi also responded. She said that she had only heard the mother and son side of the story and mistakenly thought that her mother had abandoned her. She had mixed feelings about the mother and son. She was heartbroken that her family had deceived her. Her fans felt even more heartbroken when they saw her post. After a while, many fans left comments on Tang with social media. Movie Queen Tang, I sympathize with your mother's experience. But it's He Village's fault. Xiaomi didn't know that she was deceived. Xiaomi is really pitiful. Her parents only treated her as a money-making machine. She doesn't have a mother. She's so lonely. I hope you can understand Xiaomi's desperation to find her mother. Since your sisters and Xiaomi didn't do anything wrong, why don't you consider letting Xiaomi go home with you? Isn't it the best result for a family reunion? No matter what, Xiaomi is your sister. She's so pitiful. Xiaomi just wants family. She doesn't mean anything else. I hope movie queen Tang can persuade her mother to acknowledge Xiaomi. Tangwa's latest post was overwhelming. They all wanted Che Ruoqian to acknowledge He Xiaomi. They felt that He Xiaomi was too pitiful and lonely. It was as if the whole world was plotting against her. Tangwa looked at these comments and felt that it was very funny. The netizens were indeed very free. They were very active in other people's affairs. She didn't believe that He Xiaomi didn't know about the situation in He Village. She had to know. Look at the latest news. Zhua Yi stared at the computer. He Xiaomi is in trouble again. Tangwa raised her eyebrows slightly. She turned on her phone and found He Xiaomi's news on the hot search list. She clicked on it and saw the latest interview. Host, Xiaomi, do you have anything to say about this? He Xiaomi, I'm in a mess right now. I don't know what to do. Host, I can understand. After all, no one can accept being deceived by the people around them. The fact that you can sit here and chat with me shows that you are stronger than many people. Host, Xiaomi, do you still want to acknowledge your mother? He Xiaomi, who doesn't want to acknowledge their mother? But she won't want me. I've tried my best. No matter what I do, she won't give me a chance. Host, Xiaomi, your mother is in pain too. Maybe it's because of what happened in the past that she can't get over it. I believe that the two of you will definitely feel relieved and untie all the knots in your hearts. He Xiaomi, there won't be such a day. The host paused for a moment and said, the production team mentioned that they would like to invite Miss Che to meet you. If Miss Che agrees, what do you want to say to her? Chapter 52:21. Facing the host's question, He Xiaomi remained silent. The host was very patient. After asking the question, he didn't rush He Xiaomi to answer. Instead, he waited quietly by the side. After about a minute, He Xiaomi raised her head slightly. My wish is very simple. I want to call her mom. When He Xiaomi said her wish in such a calm and persistent tone, the host and the audience couldn't help but tear up. The host continued with some touching words. He told He Xiaomi that the production team would try their best to communicate with Che Ruoqian about this. In everyone's opinion, the He family's bad habits were the cause of Che Ruoqian's tragedy. The mother and son of the He family weren't He Xiaomi. He Xiaomi was just an innocent child. Snatch and seize. When she came to this world, no one asked her if she was willing. She couldn't choose her own birth. Therefore, Che Ruoqian should acknowledge He Xiaomi. All right, Xiaomi, this matter shouldn't affect you anymore. After watching the interview and the netizens' comments, He Xiaomi's manager finally smiled. Whether Miss Che acknowledges you or not, it won't affect your career in the future. This wasn't your fault. It was your father and grandmother's fault. He Xiaomi nodded. That's good. The few companies that you talked to before said that they have no problem with you. You are more popular than ever now. There are many companies that want to work with you. At this point, the manager paused and said something else. But this way, the netizens might affect Miss Che and Best Actress Tang's lives. As the manager said this, she showed He Xiaomi some comments online. That's it. The general idea of these comments was that they hoped Che Ruoqian would acknowledge He Xiaomi and Tangwa would accept He Xiaomi as her sister. These were the milder comments. Some of the harsher comments were basically scolding Che Ruoqian. They said that she was heartless and that He Xiaomi was so pitiful. Why couldn't she sympathize with her? Some people even went to Tangwa's social media account to scold her. They said that He Xiaomi was afraid that He Xiaomi would split the family assets, so she stopped Che Ruoqian from acknowledging her daughter. They said that Tangwa was selfish. The manager observed He Xiaomi's expression. Netizens are like this. Once they are slightly influenced by others, they become muddle-headed and hope to go to other people's place to give advice. Then I'll post an article to restrain the behavior of my fans. I'll tell them not to mess around in other people's territory. He Xiaomi hurriedly skimmed through the comments. She wasn't touched at all. Many things had happened during this period of time. Her identity had been exposed. Her grandmother and father had been arrested and were about to be imprisoned. Faced with this result, not only was she not anxious, but she was also relieved. In recent years, the He family's mother and son used her money to make themselves look good. They pretended to be generous and invited all kinds of people in the village to stay. She was already annoyed. She didn't know how many years they would be sentenced to. She even hoped that they would never come out. It was a fantasy novel. Che Ruotian and Tanghua were currently being attacked on the internet, as well as being morally kidnapped. She had not thought about this at all. She couldn't control the thoughts of the netizens. At most, she could restrain her own fans. The netizens attacked Che Ruotian only because the other party was unwilling to acknowledge her. If the other party was willing to acknowledge her, such a thing would not have happened. Chapter 52-22. As her manager, she understood He Xiaomi's attitude. The manager didn't say much. Anyway, it wouldn't affect He Xiaomi much. It didn't matter whether Che Ruotian acknowledged He Xiaomi or not. Su Qing was especially concerned about this. He felt that He Xiaomi was unhappy because Che Ruotian didn't acknowledge her. Grab hold of her. Che Ruotian rejected the suggestion of the production crew. She didn't want to talk to He Xiaomi on the set. This meant that her attitude was still firm. Even he couldn't change her mind. But Su Qing had a way. He realized that other than her husband and daughter, Che Ruotian also cared about her parents. He also heard that Che Ruotian's parents had a different attitude towards He Xiaomi. Because this matter blew up, Che Ruotian's mother and daughter also knew about it. They even came to the family twice to persuade Che Ruotian to acknowledge He Xiaomi. They said the same thing. It wasn't the child's fault. The child was her flesh and blood. She might as well acknowledge her. Now, the two elders of the Che family came again. Not only did they come, they also brought a few relatives. They were all here to persuade Che Ruotian to acknowledge He Xiaomi. In their eyes, He Xiaomi was so outstanding. It wouldn't be a loss for them to acknowledge her. The public opinion on the internet was not in Che Ruotian's favor. As long as she agreed to acknowledge He Xiaomi, all the rumors against her would disappear. Che Ruotian sat on the sofa silently. She pressed Tang Tianchua's hand hard and replied to everyone, "I can't do this." Although He Xiaomi was her daughter, she didn't want her to come. She was forced to come. She still had that person's blood in her. She could recall the unbearable past, but she couldn't accept that she had to face that person's blood for the rest of her life. TSK. It was an ill-fated fate that they met. Why couldn't they just be strangers? Moreover, she wasn't stupid. She had a daughter. How could she not understand that He Xiaomi didn't really want to be her mother? She probably wanted to take revenge on her. After so many years, every time He Xiaomi appeared and spoke against her, she would always be in trouble. She would never accept He Xiaomi in the first place, let alone now. Even if she was scolded for being heartless and cruel, she would not accept it. If you really don't like her, just ignore her. She's our granddaughter after all. Let her go back to our place during the holidays and not see you. What do you think? The three of you are all busy people. Even if the two of us want to get together with you, we have to set a time in advance. Xiaomi doesn't have anyone to dote on her, and we don't have anyone to accompany us. Why don't the three of us stay together? Mother Che said, that way, you won't be able to see her. Everyone will be happy. It's better than letting outsiders talk about it, right? Che Ruotian did not relent. This was too much for her. Chapter 52-23. Grandma, Grandpa, my mother is a little tired, Tanghua said at this time. These two really didn't disappoint her. Sure enough, they came again and again. Mother can't accept this. You'd better not force her. Xiaogua, how can you say that? We're not forcing her. But He Xiaomi is also our granddaughter. How can we let her wander outside? Mother Che said, we've already compromised to this extent, but she still doesn't agree. Dad, Mom, there's no room for discussion. Che Ruotian did not even want to explain to them. She knew why they wanted to acknowledge He Xiaomi. There were two reasons. The second son of the Che family could not stand being judged by others. He Xiaomi was also an outstanding person. It would not be embarrassing to acknowledge her. The other reason was that their favorite granddaughter also wanted to enter that circle. Because of this, the other party came to look for Tanghua. Tangwa really helped the other party twice because they were related by blood. Unfortunately, the other party was not someone who made a living in that circle, so it did not cause much of a stir. Tangwa felt that her cousin was better in that circle. The two of them were not very satisfied, so they spent less time with each other in recent years. Che Ruachian knew their characters very well, so she did not tell them the truth back then. As for the 2 years when she disappeared, she said that she went to earn money. There was an opportunity that she had to seize. She even sent some money to them. The two of them did not ask much. They did not care much about her. It was because although the two of them were from a small county, they still valued boys over girls. They put more effort into her younger brother. They did not mistreat her even when it came to food and clothing. But she could not be wrong about the truth of the matter. The two of them worked hard and provided her with food and clothing, but they did not give her anything extra. Everything was prepared for her younger brother. She did not experience being kidnapped, so she did not care much about it. Perhaps it was because she lived in that family for a long time that she gradually got used to that way of life. After being kidnapped to the He family village, she learned a deep lesson. The bad habit of valuing boys over girls was so terrible that it almost ruined her life. Therefore, she wanted to change her fate. Even if she found out in despair that she was pregnant, she didn't want to end her life just like that. She hadn't really seen the beauty of this world. Che family's two elders noticed Che Ruachian's gaze and felt a little awkward. Compared to the He family's mother and son, who favored boys over girls, they had to hide it a little deeper since Che family's two elders cared about their reputation. To the outside world, they claimed that they doted on their children equally, but in reality, they did it differently. Realizing that they couldn't persuade Che Ruachian, they decided to leave. Actually, they already had their own ideas. It was fine if Che Ruachian did not want to acknowledge He Xiaomi, but they would look for her themselves. It's just as you expected. Your grandparents have already contacted He Xiaomi. I'm guessing that they will appear on that interview program again. He Xiaomi's team will definitely not give up this opportunity. When the show goes on, Auntie might be dragged out by the netizens to scold her again. Tangwa, we can't stop the netizens from talking. Out of sight, out of mind. Let them scold us if they want. Zhuai, that's not like you. Do you have any other plans? Why don't you tell me? I'm your PR manager. Don't hide everything from me. What plans can I have? Don't we spend a lot of time together every day? Your nose is so sensitive. Don't tell me you didn't notice anything. Chapter 52-24. The two elders of the Che family contacted the crew and expressed their willingness to communicate with He Xiaomi. The crew was overjoyed. The crew then contacted He Xiaomi. He Xiaomi's team was also overjoyed when they received the news. He Xiaomi was a little surprised. But when she heard from her manager that the second elder of the Che family might want to acknowledge her, she was excited. On the day of the recording, the two elders of the Che family waited in the lounge. Their precious granddaughter, Che Rueha, came with them. Grab and grab. Che Rueha's appearance was not bad among ordinary people. But in the entertainment industry where there were many beauties, she was very ordinary. Especially her facial features, they were not very special. Her face even had some modifications. Because of Tangwa, she had acted in some dramas before. But unfortunately, she was not cut out for the entertainment industry. She and the second elder of the Che family both felt that Tangwa did not care about it. It was not because she was not talented. This time, Che Rueha came with them to gain popularity. After all, she had acted in some dramas before. After she appeared, the netizens would definitely find out who she was. Only she and the two elders of the Che family knew about this. The crew did not know. Che Rueha was not very outstanding. So, no one knew who she was. Regarding this, Che Rueha was a little unhappy. But she could not say anything now. She watched the conversation between the host and He Xiaomi on the screen. Che Rueha was a little envious. This He Xiaomi was really amazing. She had reached the top right after she debuted. Before long, Che Rueha and the two elders of the Che family went on stage to meet He Xiaomi. The second elder of the Che family expressed his willingness to acknowledge He Xiaomi in front of everyone. Even if Che Ruachian did not acknowledge He Xiaomi, they still had to acknowledge her. No matter what, He Xiaomi was their granddaughter. Che Rueha did not give up on the popularity of the show. She quickly said, After hearing about what happened to you, Grandpa and Grandma have been very upset. They have been wanting to see you. They did not come to see you recently because they went to work for Aunt. Unfortunately, Aunt is still unwilling. They were afraid that you would be disappointed, so they came first. No matter what, you are Aunt's daughter. You are our granddaughter. You are also my cousin. Since you know about our relationship, we must acknowledge each other as family. The two elders of the Che family quickly agreed. They even said that if Che Ruotian did not acknowledge her, he Xiaomi would go to the Che family every festival. This was also her home. Since the two elders of the Che family had such an attitude, it was impossible for he Xiaomi to deny it. Thus, both parties hugged each other as a response to this matter. The host was also a little excited. After this program was broadcast, it would probably cause some commotion, right? At this time, she looked at her small card and saw the notice on it. Although she was stunned for a moment, she felt that it was reasonable to do so. Therefore, after the few of them calmed down, the host said some touching words, followed by saying, "Congratulations to your family for being able to become a member. However, according to the procedure and to be safe, you still need to do a paternity test next." Both parties did not question this topic. This was indeed a process. They could not just recognize each other. If they did not have a firm relationship, the law would not recognize their kinship. Che Ruotian was definitely unwilling to accept this, so one of the second sons of the Che family decided to do it with he Xiaomi. After the show was broadcasted, he Xiaomi's fans were really happy. They told everyone that their Xiaomi had a family and that someone loved her. Chapter 52-25. Of course, some people did not stop attacking Che Ruotian and Tanghua. Everyone on the internet knew that the two elders of the Che family had done a blood test with he Xiaomi, but they did not take it to heart. Snatch. They thought that it was just a procedure and that both parties were relatives. There was no problem. After all, Che Ruotian had never denied that he Xiaomi was not her daughter. However, at this moment, the doctor holding the report was also a little dumbfounded. Looking at the results of both parties, he rubbed his eyes hard and realized that he was not mistaken. He Xiaomi and Mother Che had no blood relations at all. Although it was hard to believe, the doctor still had to tell the truth. When the two elders of the Che family heard the results, they were a little dumbfounded. Even he Xiaomi was stunned on the spot. "Did you make a mistake somewhere? Is the test accurate?" Mother Che asked anxiously. "How can we not be related by blood? Is it because of the difference in seniority?" The doctor said that there was no mistake in the test results. They had checked again before, and every detail was correct. They had done this countless times. It was impossible for them to make a mistake. The two elders of the Che family did not believe it, and neither did he Xiaomi. Hence, they went to another hospital and the results were still the same. "Maybe it's because of the difference in seniority," Mother Che said. "Why don't we let Ruotian try?" Che Rueha said, "Aunt probably won't agree." Then, she added, "Why don't we let cousin do it? She should be easier to talk to." The two elders of the Che family thought about it. It was indeed easier to do Tanghua's job than Che Ruotian's. Tanghua looked at the pitiful faces of the two elders of the Che family and agreed this time. She followed them to the hospital and stared at he Xiaomi. She said, "I heard that the He family village used to be a ruthless place. The girls who were born there were very cruel. Who knows how many skeletons of female babies were buried there. Later, they changed and helped the poor. Families with daughters received generous subsidies. Now I suspect that they killed the child and found another baby girl to replace her." He Xiaomi's face turned pale. She clenched her fists and bit her lips hard. She had thought of all kinds of results, but she did not expect the truth to be like this. If she really had nothing to do with Che Ruotian, it would be a joke. Sure. After all, they did not hide the fact that they did a DNA test. In fact, the program even used this opportunity to publicize it. So, everyone was certain that she and Che Ruotian were mother and daughter. He Xiaomi wanted to leave, but her legs wouldn't listen to her. Once again, Zhui pretended to be the informant and posted a piece of news using a fake account on the internet. Recently, it was revealed that he Xiaomi and the Che family did a paternity test. They went to several different hospitals, but the results showed that they were not related at all. The two elders of the Che family didn't believe it. They thought that the difference in seniority affected the result of the test. They had already persuaded Tang Hua to go to the hospital for another test. Why do I feel that something is happening? When the system saw that Zhua Yi had finished editing and sending the message, it helped to push it. When Zhua Yi saw that his post was quickly discovered and forwarded, he was extremely puzzled. He didn't know why, but in recent years, every time he exposed and mobilized the power of the Internet Water Army, it went very smoothly. It was obviously a smurf account, but it would be discovered very quickly. If not for the fact that he had nothing to do with this platform, he would have suspected that this platform was his. Chapter 52:26. Don't you think it's still inaccurate? Tang Hua looked at the two elders of the Che family with ugly expressions. How about this? I'll call my mom and ask her to come over and cooperate with the DNA test. Otherwise, you'll say that this is a medical blind spot. Tang Hua's words were exactly what the Che family's elders wanted to say. If He Xiaomi really wasn't their granddaughter, it would be a big joke. He Xiaomi was already retreating. If it turned out that Che Ruoqian wasn't her mother after all, it would be the biggest joke in the entertainment industry. It would affect her career, and everything she had done before would be for naught. But she couldn't find a reason not to continue with the test. Until Che Ruoqian came over, she was still in a daze. Grabbing and grabbing. Che Ruoqian also had mixed feelings. Were the He family really so heartless that they couldn't tolerate a baby girl? She exchanged glances with He Xiaomi. Then, He Xiaomi looked at Che Ruoqian in a completely different way. TSK. He Xiaomi was no longer as confident as before. Instead, she felt a little guilty. Her mind was filled with the thought that if she wasn't her biological mother, then she would be a joke. At this moment, she couldn't help but admit that what she had done before was to take revenge. She felt that God was unfair to her. They were both daughters. Why didn't her biological mother acknowledge her? Every time the public opinion was on her side, she would wonder if Che Ruoqian regretted not acknowledging her from the start. If she had acknowledged her from the start, she wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. To her disappointment, Che Ruoqian had no intention of acknowledging her. Now, things were even more complicated. Che Ruoqian might not be her biological mother. This was really hard to accept. Che Ruoqian cooperated with the test. No one left. They waited outside for the results to come out. When the test results came out and showed that they weren't related, He Xiaomi's head buzzed. Che Ruoqian, on the other hand, had mixed feelings. She didn't know how to express it. She felt a little relieved, but also a little regretful. It wasn't that He Xiaomi wasn't her biological daughter. It was that she had saved the child once, but the child was still gone. She didn't suspect anything else because she had seen the tragic deaths of baby girls several times during the 2 years she had been in He family village. She had tried to save her before, but she had been held back by the He family's mother and son. She had watched the baby girl drown in the water with her own eyes. That scene had left a shadow in her heart. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Che Ruoqian said, also, I'll take this report with me. Based on the rumors on the internet some time ago, I think I should make a statement. She looked at He Xiaomi and said, after all, we are not related by blood. It's not good for you and me if people spread rumors. He Xiaomi's face turned pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Che Ruoqian was not her mother, so she had no right to criticize her. They were just strangers, so she could not be so self-righteous. Che Ruoqian didn't want to stay in the same place as He Xiaomi. She had indeed caused her a lot of trouble. Of course, she didn't hate him. She didn't have the strength to hate anyone because she needed to use all her strength to live. How much strength would it take to hate others? Now that all the knots in her heart had been untied, she just wanted to grab hold of the happiness in front of her. She didn't want to think about anything else. Chapter 52:27. He Xiaomi stared blankly in the direction that Che Ruoqian had disappeared into. She looked away and clenched her fists. Since the truth has been revealed, I hope you can make a statement to restrain your fans. Don't let them keep pressuring me to acknowledge my sister and my mother as her daughter. Your previous actions have caused a lot of trouble for our family. Tang Hua did not wait for He Xiaomi's reply and left. She guessed that He Xiaomi's company did not know about this. He Xiaomi definitely did not have the courage to announce this to her fans. Even if her company knew, they would not let her make a statement. Perhaps they would even let her hide this matter and let it slowly fade from the public sight. However, Zhua Yi was already prepared. At this time, netizens were all waiting for Zhua Yi's latest news. Che Ruoqian had just left a hospital and had already done a DNA test with He Xiaomi. The results showed that they were not related. The netizens and fans did not want to believe it. They thought it was just a rumor. But it didn't take long before Tangkor's official Weibo account released the results of Che Ruoqian and He Xiaomi's DNA test. They also warned the netizens not to spread rumors or discuss anything that wasn't true. Otherwise, they would be held accountable. The internet was not an illegal place. This time, they did not give He Xiaomi a chance to react. By the time He Xiaomi's company reacted, it was already too late. After all this time and scolding, Che Ruoqian is not her mother. This is interesting. Che Ruoqian and Tanghua are so wronged. They are being chased and scolded by a certain someone's fans, forcing them to acknowledge her as their daughter. Just thinking about it makes me sick. By the way, even if they are related, what does it have to do with these irrelevant netizens? This is their own family matter. Why don't they settle it in private? Why do they have to fight it out on the internet? Even if they are mother and daughter, Che Ruoqian went through such a tragic experience in the past. This daughter is like a stain in her life. It's understandable that she doesn't acknowledge her. Not many people can face a past like this. Actually, I also want to say that He Xiaomi has never expressed her opinion on this matter. Her attitude has always been ambiguous, and she has always been on the losing side. The netizens are actually the most anxious ones. After all this time, I realized that she was just using the netizens as a knife to cut Che Ruoqian. Then the question is, does she really want to acknowledge her biological mother, or does she want to take revenge? It's probably revenge. If she really wants to acknowledge her biological mother and likes this mother, how can she watch her biological mother be forced by netizens like this? Look, there's a new piece of news. Zhua Yi's next revelation was, a few years ago, when she was at the peak of her debut, a certain director helped her find Madame Che. She left with a certain director after the family reunion was unsuccessful. Soon after the spring of the second year, she actually brought the He family's mother and son to Madame Che's house. According to the nanny who had already resigned from the Che family, Madame Che had even told her about what had happened back then. Wasn't she very confused a few days ago? Why would the He family's mother and son lie to her? What I want to say is that her acting skills are a bit too good. Not long after Zhua Yi exposed this, a netizen exposed something even more shocking. It was actually an interview with Jiang Xiaohua. The title of this episode was Flower Zhang's Past. Vertex. Chapter 52-28. The name referred to Jiang Xiaohua's past life. Because of Jiang Xiaohua's past, the He family village was exposed. Snatch and seize. The interview was more daring, and Jiang Xiaohua did not mince her words. She did not want to save the He family village's image at all. Even though the He family village no longer had any cases of kidnapping women, there were still many bad habits. Anyone with a conscience would not marry their daughter to the He family village. She had seen the ugly faces of the He family village since she was a child. The host asked Jiang Xiaohua if she missed her mother. Jiang Xiaohua said of course she missed her mother. The host then asked why she did not look for her mother. Jiang Xiaohua answered the same question that she had answered many times. It was because she had seen some things since she was a child that she felt it was right not to disturb them. The women that were left in the He family village had either become one with the He family village and became one of the ugly people. Otherwise, they were numb and lived like machines all day long. They could even be beaten and scolded. The He family village could be saved and helped, but their thoughts were still the same. In the interview, Jiang Xiaohua also mentioned that there were many mothers in the village who had been taken away when the village changed. Until now, there was no news of them. From this sentence, it was clear that the children in the village knew what their mothers had suffered and what the people in the village had done. Ding, 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 ding ding as huo. OM. When the netizens compared this interview with He Xiaomi's previous response, they were shocked. He Xiaomi always put herself on the weak side. Every time, she would attract everyone's sympathy and pity. They could not help but use their own strength to protect her. However, the truth was that He Xiaomi was just pretending to be weak. She lied and asked the netizens to help her attack Che Ruotian and Tanghua. Speaking of which, Tanghua was a few years younger than He Xiaomi. She had been attacked in the past, and it had a lot to do with her. Speaking of which, Tanghua and Che Ruotian had not done anything overboard. At most, they avoided the issue of acknowledging their family. They did not want to acknowledge them and did not use Tangkor's power to do anything. However, He Xiaomi's attitude caused the netizens to push the two of them into a dead end. Instead, she watched quietly from the side and treated everyone like idiots. This was too scary. Since she wanted to acknowledge her mother, she should admit that Tanghua was her younger sister. However, her actions clearly showed that she was treating the two of them as enemies. The netizens' analysis was horrifying. How was He Xiaomi simple and pure? Was she a scheming White Lotus? What Tanghua and Zhua Yi did not expect was that one of the family Tang's nannies really went online and exposed the truth. Don't be fooled by the fact that Madam is a big shot in the business world. She is actually a very gentle person at home. After working at the family Tang for so many years, Madam treats us very well. It can be said that I will never find such a good job again. I still remember that day. I was the one who opened the door for the young lady and the director. After they came in, I was outside cleaning the glass. Madam didn't notice, and I heard the quarrel inside. That director was really strange. No one knew what position he was standing on. When Madam refused to acknowledge that young lady, he actually scolded Madam and said that Madam was too cruel and heartless. As a nanny, she should have kept such things to herself. The things that have happened recently have really made it difficult for me to calm down. The nanny repeated how Su Qing had brought He Xiaomi to look for Che Ruotian. Although the nanny did not mention any names, everyone knew who the director and the young lady were. Chapter 52-29. In reality, the biggest twist was that Che Ruotian and He Xiaomi were not related. After the netizens found out that He Xiaomi was two-faced and scheming, a large number of her fans stopped following her. Of course, there was still a group of crazy fans who thought this was the result of Tangkor's PR and did not believe in science. At this moment, the person in charge of He Xiaomi's company was on the phone with Su Qing. He Xiaomi was Su Qing's woman, so they did not dare to do anything to her, even if her image was completely destroyed. How could there be such a coincidence? I'm guessing this is a scheme by Tangkor. Don't do anything for now. I have my own plans. Grab hold of. The person in charge replied. A famous brand has called to cancel their collaboration with Xiaomi. There are also other brands that we are working with that are demanding compensation. We can't avoid this. You guys can handle this. I want to deal with Tangkor's PR. Xiaomi must be Che Ruotian's daughter. They must have done something. I will think of a way to get them to do another DNA test. Su Qing did not think he was wrong. After hanging up the phone, he immediately arranged for someone to do it. As long as he got hold of Che Ruotian's hair, everything would be easy. Che Ruotian went for a weekly hair treatment and beauty treatment. However, Su Qing had no idea that everything was under the control of Tanghua. Zhui was initially shocked that Che Ruotian and He Xiaomi were not mother and daughter, but he soon understood. He suspected that Tanghua already knew about this. That was why she was so calm. A few days later, Su Qing's people received Che Ruotian's hair. The hairdresser reminded them that there were a few strands of white hair on Che Ruotian's head and wanted to help her pull them out. Che Ruotian did not suspect anything and allowed them to pull them out. She did not know what they were thinking. After Su Qing received the hair, he brought He Xiaomi to do a DNA test. He Xiaomi also wondered if Tangkor was behind this. If it was, then Tangkor's reputation was going to plummet. Just as the two of them were waiting for the results, He Xiaomi and Su Qing received a phone call. After hearing the contents of the call, the two of them were stunned. They quickly went onto social media and saw the trending topic. Hashtag Su Qing and He Xiaomi don't believe the DNA test results. Hashtag the main article was. According to an insider, Su Qing and He Xiaomi don't believe the DNA test results. They think Tangkor is behind this. They are not related. Su Qing arranged for someone to pull out Ms. Che's hair. Currently, the two of them were waiting for the results of the paternity test in a hospital. This picture was accompanied by a photo of Su Qing and He Xiaomi. It was very clear. As soon as this piece of news came out, the internet really blew up. This is too vicious. What is Su Qing doing? Wonderful pin shop Mia Bai Feng Com. Manipulating things behind the scenes? Does he really think that the hospital belongs to the Tang family? Didn't they do it a few times in the past? They were all in public hospitals. How could Tang Core interfere? Even 10 Tang families wouldn't be able to interfere. If such a thing really happens, the hospital will be in big trouble. I can't believe he actually asked someone to pull out Che Ruoqian's hair. Speaking of which, I really sympathize with Che Ruoqian now. What is this He Xiaomi and Su Qing? Luckily, He Xiaomi isn't her biological daughter. If she really is, I wouldn't want to have such a daughter. They are probably here to collect debts. Poison. He Xiaomi and Su Qing are both evil. I won't watch their dramas anymore. He Xiaomi looked at all the negative comments and almost fainted. Su Qing hugged her and comforted her. Wait for the results. He still believed that Tangkor was behind this. Chapter 52:30. Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? The result was still the same. The report showed that He Xiaomi and Che Ruoqian were not related by blood. Su Qing couldn't believe that he had made a mistake. If the report showed that they were mother and daughter, He Xiaomi would be able to make a comeback no matter how big of a fuss they caused. Snatch. The doctor saw that Su Qing and He Xiaomi's expressions were a little strange. Who didn't know about the incident? He didn't think that he would be involved in this matter. At first, he didn't believe Su Qing when he said that Tangkor was manipulating things behind the scenes. Tangkor didn't have the ability to make a legitimate hospital produce a fake report. Unless the hospital wanted to get into big trouble, not many people would be able to withstand the punishment. This Su Qing was too whimsical. Did he film too many dramas and overthink things? He Xiaomi's fans were waiting for Su Qing and He Xiaomi's response. They used the report to slap Che Ruoqian's face. A day passed, and there was no response. 2 days passed, and there was still no response. Tangwa didn't even ask the system to expose the truth. At this time, the netizens could already guess what the result was. The only ones that were slapped in the face were Su Qing and He Xiaomi. Moreover, the two of them still had a black mark that couldn't be removed. On top of that, Tangkor had already filed a lawsuit against the beauty salon. Since they dared to do such a thing, they would have to face the consequences. Over the past few days, He Xiaomi's fans had lost a lot. The remaining fans still said that He Xiaomi was pitiful, but no one believed them. Next, He Xiaomi would have to face various dramas, advertisements, endorsements, contract terminations, and compensation for damage to her reputation. No matter how powerful Su Qing was and how powerful his family was, there was no way he could make a comeback. He Xiaomi couldn't survive in the industry anymore. No one dared to use her anymore. What an interesting person. Who wouldn't be afraid of someone who hid a dagger in their smile and used their weakness to attack others? The number of people that supported He Xiaomi before was now equal to the number of people that suppressed her. The money that He Xiaomi had earned earlier, after paying the compensation, was actually not much left. After calculating carefully, the He family had spent too much on her. After experiencing prosperity and returning to a normal life, any normal person would be able to accept this difference. Su Qing suggested that He Xiaomi move in with him. He Xiaomi agreed, and the two of them started living together. Su Qing continued his career and prepared for a new drama. His plan was to give He Xiaomi some outstanding roles after the limelight was over. Netizens were all forgetful. This matter was not He Xiaomi's fault alone. She just wanted to acknowledge her mother. Perhaps she had lied a little, but in his opinion, it was not a big deal. The only mistake was that she did not expect that she and Che Ruoqian were not mother and daughter. Su Qing blamed this on himself. He thought that it was because he didn't investigate properly that He Xiaomi encountered this. He also found out that there were people in He family village who borrowed their daughters to receive subsidies. Perhaps He Xiaomi was such an existence and had been living in He Dijin's house all this time. They even went to visit He Dijin and his mother in prison, but the two refused to admit it. Su Qing thought that the two of them were afraid of getting involved in more things. The mother and son would probably go to jail forever. The police had also investigated, but they couldn't find any evidence, so they could only leave it at that. When Su Qing was preparing for the new drama, he added a role for He Xiaomi. But he didn't expect that when the actors found out about the casting, they all rejected the role. Chapter 52:31. Su Qing wasn't satisfied. He had tried a few times, but none of the slightly famous actors were willing to act in his film. Those who were willing to come, he didn't like them. When it came to choosing actors, he had high standards. He couldn't just let some bad actors ruin his reputation. Grab hold of him. But he didn't know that after the incident where he arranged for someone to steal Che Ruotian's hair was exposed, his reputation had already been ruined. Many people thought that there was a problem with his character, and no one wanted to get involved in this. Su Qing, is it still not enough? He Xiaomi noticed that Su Qing had been frowning recently. They didn't come because they didn't have good taste. When you find a suitable actor, they will regret it. Chase after when He Xiaomi didn't mention that her name was crossed out. At this moment, her only chance to turn things around was to rely on Su Qing. If Su Qing couldn't do it, then she really didn't have a chance to turn things around. She had basically lost all the money she had earned in the past few years. She was used to a good life, and it was impossible for her to return to the past. She felt a little regretful. If she had stopped it when it first happened, perhaps things wouldn't have turned out this way. The first time she was rejected by Che Ruotian, she didn't stubbornly acknowledge her. Would this day have come? The two of them didn't do a paternity test. Perhaps there had always been a misunderstanding between them. She definitely wouldn't have reached this point. She didn't have any background. She was only able to get to this stage because of Su Qing. Seeing that Su Qing couldn't help her, He Xiaomi panicked. She was afraid that Su Qing would abandon her like those people. So, she really had to hold on to Su Qing and not let go. At this moment, Su Qing had no intention of throwing He Xiaomi away. He was a stubborn and confident person. When he decided on something, no matter what others said, it couldn't change his mind. He still didn't think that there was anything wrong with He Xiaomi. Those people who said that He Xiaomi weren't good didn't even know her up close. He felt that from He Xiaomi's situation, it was understandable that she would speak and act the way she did. She wasn't evil. Not long after, Su Qing received a piece of news. Someone advised him not to get involved in this area. His previous actions were very bad. Even if he could film something, he might not be able to pass. Plus, Tangkor had so many cinemas. Su Qing had offended Tangkor so badly. Even if his film was approved, would Tangkor let him broadcast it? Without Tangkor, what could they achieve? Su Qing mainly made movies, and movies relied on the cinema chain. This time, he was really pushed to a dead end. However, Su Qing was not a simple director. He was also considered a rich second-generation heir. Since he couldn't film for the time being, he felt that he should go home and work. Originally, the Su clan was very happy that he was able to return. However, the Su clan was also aware of his recent experiences. They suggested that Su Qing could go back, but he had to break off his relationship with He Xiaomi and could not contact her in the future. He Xiaomi accidentally overheard this and became even more flustered. She used her best pitiful appearance to make Su Qing unable to part with her. At this time, Su Qing still had a filter for He Xiaomi. He was also an unruly person and didn't want to listen to his family. Since he was disobedient, he naturally could not return to the company to work. At this time, the Su clan's young master, who was the son of Su father's second wife, received a mysterious email. Chapter 52:32. The content of the email was very simple. The gist of it was that if he did not work hard at this time, he would never have the chance when Su Qing's matter was forgotten. Su Xin did not have much hope of inheriting the family business because his father favored Su Qing very much, and Su Qing was so outstanding. In order to avoid his father's dislike, he could only be a carefree second-generation heir. He did not expect Su Qing to give him this opportunity. He looked at the email in a daze and was also somewhat confused. After all, for so many years, although he was idle in the company, his father did not intend to train him at all. Therefore, he did not know many things. Soon, Su Xin found that at the end of the email, there were two buttons. One was to agree and the other was to reject. He subconsciously clicked agree and did not expect to enter another interface. He looked at the information inside in a daze. Wasn't this some of the recent information about his family company? The information inside was too detailed, so detailed that it was frightening. However, some of the contents deeply attracted him, making him unable to refuse. Some of the content were some of the problems that the Su family had encountered recently. If he could take it out at this time, his father would definitely look at him differently. How could he not have some thoughts about such a big company? Moreover, he also hoped that his father would value him. Therefore, he decided to learn and accept the kindness of this mysterious person. He secretly guessed that since the other party could get such secret information and did not disclose it to others, he obviously did not want to expose the secret of the Su family. Perhaps he had a grudge against his elder brother? In fact, he did not understand. His elder brother did not respect his father at all and always made his father angry. Why did his father still like him so much? His father's first wife ran away on her own. Unexpectedly, she was the white moonlight in his heart. His mother almost never received his father's love. Thinking of this, Su Shan wanted to seize this opportunity even more. Su Qing and his father had a conflict again. He did not lack money. His father put on airs and asked him to leave He Xiaomi. He was very unhappy. His foresight was much better than his father's. At least, He Xiaomi would not run away with someone else and abandon him. His father's foresight was not good. His mother ran away with someone else and he still cared about her. The wife that he married later was only because the other party's company was in crisis. Since his father put on airs, he would not go back. Therefore, Su Qing decided to take He Xiaomi out to relax and have fun. He wanted He Xiaomi to see all kinds of scenery. What he didn't know was that Su Shan gradually showed up in the company because of a mysterious email. Su Shan's father, who was old, was very disappointed with Su Qing. He also regretted that he didn't raise his son well because of his own selfishness. When he saw that his youngest son was self-taught, he was overjoyed and immediately took him seriously. Originally, he rarely asked about him, but now, he was always by his side to nurture him. When the company's higher-ups saw this, they were very satisfied with Su Shan's performance. They weren't so worried about the future development of the Su Corporation. At this moment, Su Qing had already brought He Xiaomi to tour the mountains and rivers, and they had seen all kinds of scenery. The more she saw, the more He Xiaomi was afraid that her life would return to its original state. She had no hope of returning to the entertainment industry, so she could only hold on to Su Qing. At this moment, the two of them arrived at a small town. After leaving this small town, they would return to the city. After all, they had been playing outside for 3 years. They were just passing by this small town, not here for sightseeing. Moreover, they were in a rush for the past 2 days. It was also because the transportation here was not convenient. Otherwise, he would have taken a plane long ago. It should be said that the person who was anxious was Su Qing. Because of the great changes in the Su clan, he had no choice but to return. Vertex. When she felt that something was wrong, she realized that this was not the way back to the hotel. She wanted to run away, but 2 men appeared out of nowhere and held her down and tied her up. She heard a few people discussing how they could sell her for a good price. She was extremely flustered. How could she not understand what was going on? She cried and threw a tantrum, and even said that she would give them a lot of money, but these people were indifferent. "Let me go. My boyfriend's family is really rich. He will give you a lot of money. With this money, you can buy more women." He Xiaomi shouted. "As long as you let me go, as long as your other requests are not too excessive, I will definitely fulfill them." She really panicked. She did not want to be sold to a small mountain village. Chapter 52:34. No matter how much He Xiaomi struggled, she was still sold. After that, she was forced to give birth to a child and lived a life of numbness and pain. This scene seemed very familiar. She had heard many people talk about it. Finally, one day, when no one was paying attention, she escaped. Unexpectedly, she succeeded. She ran back to the foot of the mountain, ran back to the town, and went to a familiar hotel. She knocked on the door, but it was not Su Qing who opened it. It was a stranger. Then, she remembered that she had lived in the mountains for 3 years. Su Qing had left long ago. She still remembered Su Qing's phone number. She hurriedly called Su Qing, and he came to pick her up. 3 years ago, He Xiaomi went missing. Su Qing missed the shareholders' meeting in order to find her. Because of that, he lost the right to be the successor. Now, the Su Corporation was managed by Su Shan. Su Shan's father was very disappointed in him. He almost didn't leave him any shares. He only had a little in his hands and could only wait for the annual dividends. Although he didn't lack anything now, he was living a very sullen life. Suddenly receiving He Xiaomi's call, Su Qing was very calm. He wasn't as anxious as before. Seeing He Xiaomi in such a sorry state, he didn't pity her. He still took her away. On the way, He Xiaomi didn't say anything. She only said that she had forgotten. Su Qing was suspicious. He didn't know why, but he remembered Che Ruoqian's experience. He wondered if He Xiaomi had the same experience as Che Ruoqian. Anything could happen in 3 years. He sent He Xiaomi to a private hospital for a checkup. He told the doctor to let He Xiaomi sleep and did a full body checkup on her. The results showed that He Xiaomi had no signs of giving birth. Only then did Su Qing dispel his doubts. However, he didn't understand why He Xiaomi didn't want to talk about what had happened in the past 3 years. Since He Xiaomi didn't experience those things and Su Qing didn't have anyone else he liked, he naturally lived with He Xiaomi. However, he didn't mention marriage. He Xiaomi felt guilty and didn't mention it either. At this moment, she was constantly worried that the people from that place would come out and expose all her secrets. Su Qing still wanted to know what He Xiaomi had experienced, so he sent people to investigate. Not long after, he found out the truth. He Xiaomi went out and accidentally hit her head. She was saved by a kind person in the mountains. However, He Xiaomi didn't know who she was and stayed in that place for 3 years. Everyone in that place knew He Xiaomi. They also said that a few days ago, He Xiaomi suddenly ran away for no reason and they couldn't catch up with her. When Su Qing was looking for He Xiaomi, he did not notice such a place and did not suspect anything. Well, everything has been resolved. From today onwards, I don't need to send Su Shan any more emails, but I still need to send him a farewell email. Tangua's fingers fell on the keyboard and kept typing the last email to Su Shan. It was Tangua who created the illusion that He Xiaomi had been in for 3 years. He Xiaomi was experiencing an illusion, and from the outside world's point of view, she had hit her head and was delirious. She made arrangements for He Xiaomi to stay in the small mountain village. After 3 years, He Xiaomi would find an opportunity to escape. In other words, she had arranged an experience similar to Che Ruoqian's. She just wanted her to experience how difficult it was for Che Ruoqian. After all, they were on opposing sides. She couldn't ignore the damage that He Xiaomi had caused to the Tang family in the original plot. In this lifetime, He Xiaomi had done everything on purpose. She could not be ignored. Vertex. Chapter 52-35. After Su Shan finished reading the emails, he realized that other than the last farewell email, all the other emails disappeared instantly. He didn't even have a chance to react. Snatch and seize. He looked at the last farewell email and felt a little lost. At first, he was a little scared. Later, the person who sent the email actually taught him how to manage a company. He had already regarded the other party as a teacher and learned very humbly. He got the attention and encouragement that he didn't get from his father, so he was very satisfied. No matter what questions he asked, the other party would patiently answer. He was simply his life mentor. When he took over Su Enterprise, the other party first mentioned his purpose. He couldn't let Su Enterprise fall into Su Qing's hands and never shake hands with Su Qing. Su Shan felt that this request was too simple. Su Qing had never looked up to him and always regarded him as dust on the ground. How could they be harmonious? He agreed to this request without hesitation and secretly guessed who the other party was. TSK. He obviously felt that the other party didn't have any designs on Su Enterprise. He just wanted to make Su Qing unhappy. To be honest, he also wanted to see Su Qing unhappy. He and his mother had suffered a lot because of Su Qing over the years. His mother was his father's second wife, not a mistress. Did Su Qing have to look at them like that? It was Su Qing's mother who ran away on her own. Why did the other party put the blame on them? At this time, the other party actually told him that they would never see each other again. Su Shan felt a little sad. At this time, Su Shan's phone rang. What's the matter? President Su, He Xiaomi was found. Young master took her back to his place. She seemed to be a little upset. Got it. Su Shan didn't care about this at all. Does Dad know? Master knows. He's rushing over now. Most likely, he wants to drive He Xiaomi out. There might be a conflict again. Su Shan then understood the assistant's meaning. Prepare the car. I'll follow. Big brother has a strange temper. It's easy to make Dad sick. He didn't know how many times he had tried to persuade him. Every time, he was very serious. However, the conflict between the father and son deepened. His teacher was really right. He didn't need to do anything. As long as he was good enough and looked filial to his father, the conflict between Su Qing and his father would never be resolved. This was because Su Qing was too arrogant and insufferably arrogant. Almost every time Big Brother and father had a conflict, Big Brother would lose something. She wondered if her elder brother was really so infatuated with He Xiaomi that he would disown his father for her. Su Shan hurriedly went to mediate the fight. Obviously, Su Qing was no longer attracted to He Xiaomi like before. However, in the face of Father Su's coercion, he still protected He Xiaomi with all his might. Father Su was so angry that he went straight to the hospital. Coincidentally, Su Shan came at this time. Su Qing took He Xiaomi and left, leaving only Su Shan to take care of Father Su. Father Su felt more and more that he had misjudged Su Qing. Fortunately, he had a well-behaved son. Su Shan was indifferent to everything in front of him. He wouldn't do anything to Su Fu. On the surface, he would be respectful, but he would never forget how Su Fu treated him and his mother coldly for Su Qing. Su Qing alone was enough to make Father Su restless for the rest of his life. He didn't have to do anything else. He Xiaomi was greedy for Su Qing's kindness. She kept him by her side all the time, but Su Qing was a little impatient with her. Chapter 52-36. In reality, he blamed He Xiaomi a little. If she hadn't disappeared, he might not have lost and Su Corporation might have ended up in his hands. He Xiaomi couldn't see any of this. All she wanted to do was keep Su Qing tied up and keep her secret. However, as the two of them lived together, more and more conflicts arose. He Xiaomi used all sorts of methods to restrain Su Qing. Su Qing couldn't stand it and refused to return to where they lived. He grabbed her. He Xiaomi followed him wherever he went. She found out that Su Qing had gone to the small town where He Xiaomi went missing. It was a peaceful place. He Xiaomi didn't dare to go to that place. She was afraid of being recognized and the child would come looking for her. So, she could only wait at home. Every time she was about to enter that place, she would panic. Once, she saw a few familiar faces at the entrance of the small town. She was so scared that she ran away as if she was avoiding the plague. She seemed to have understood something, but she immediately ignored it. Before she knew it, Tanghua was already 35 years old. She announced her retirement from the entertainment industry and returned to take over the family business. After the interview, Tanghua removed her halo and got into the car. Zhua Yi, who was acting as the driver, said coldly, "Now that you're about to start your second career, have you thought about marriage? For example, get married or something. Are there any benefits to marriage?" Zhua Yi, there are a lot of benefits. For example, there will always be someone to serve you tea and warm your bed. It's not like they can help me with my work. There are a lot of people who can serve me tea. Zhua Yi gripped the steering wheel tightly. He was conflicted. In the end, he said, as a husband, I have to work hard to complete every task my wife gives me. Work is not a problem. That's fine. When Mr. and Mrs. Zhua found out that Zhua Yi was working with Tanghua in the company, they couldn't help but laugh. Now you don't have to worry about your son. He has found a long-term boss, Zhua Qingfei said with satisfaction. Look, this is the result of doing a good deed. If nothing goes wrong, he won't be fired for the rest of his life. Ever since Tangkor was taken over by Tanghua and Zhua Yi, it developed rapidly and even collaborated with Su Shan several times. A few years later, Su Qing looked at the rapidly developing Tangkor and guessed that the CEO of Tangkor was very similar to the owner of the mysterious email. Coupled with various speculations, he felt that Tanghua was very likely to be that person. But he did not say a word. He simply avoided every project that Tangkor was competing for. He was present at all the gatherings that Tangkor attended. He supported all the projects that Tangkor supported. Many people realized that Su Shi followed Tang Shi in everything. Because of Su Shun's persistence, he drank a lot of soup. Tanghua felt it and didn't avoid it. Su Shun was not a fool. He must have guessed something. In the end, there was a rumor circulating in the business circle that President Su had a crush on Boss Tang. Unfortunately, Boss Tang was already married, so she could only look on helplessly. Because of this, Zhua Yi was jealous. This is wonderful pin shop. He even looked for Su Shun twice to ask him why he kept staring at his wife at every cocktail party. Su Shun felt a little wronged. He really didn't mean that. He just felt that he had to be respectful when facing his teacher. Tanghua's attitude of not avoiding him and even bringing him to drink soup had already revealed her identity. I only have respect for Boss Tang. I don't mean anything else. Zhui realized that this was indeed the case, but he was still unhappy. Su Qing stayed in the old town and had no intention of coming out. Father Su went to look for him a few times and quarreled a few times. In the end, he even stopped the family's support for him and told Su Shun to ignore him. This was because Su Qing did something that completely angered Father Su. He actually sold his shares to the Su Corporation's competitor. He Xiaomi couldn't enter the small town and couldn't get support from Su Qing. She returned to her old path and had to work to survive. Her current situation was often photographed by the media and written into news. She didn't dare to go to the small town. Every day, she was worried that someone would come looking for her. So, she lived in a more and more remote place. In the small and dark house, she regretted looking for Che Ruoqian. She wasn't Che Ruoqian's daughter. How could she be like this? Chapter 52:37. Tanghua woke up this time and saw a patch of red in front of her. There were also some red candles that were burning. The candlelight was so red that it was slightly trembling. She instantly understood that she had transmigrated to her wedding night again. From the layout of this room, this world was not set in ancient times. Their family background was probably not bad, but they were definitely not from an official's family. Young miss, how can you lift the veil? Be good and don't touch the red veil right now. This should be lifted by the son-in-law. Tanghua was lifting the red veil and looking around the room when she heard an urgent voice. She quickly looked over and saw a 13 or 14-year-old servant looking at her anxiously. Her hand was already on her veil, and she quickly put it back on. Tanghua didn't lift the veil again, because the little maidservant spoke again and handed her a piece of candied fruit. Miss, if you are hungry, you can eat this. You have to endure it for a while. After tonight, whatever you want to eat, when you want to eat, Han will help you get it. Tanghua could clearly feel that this servant girl who called herself Han Er's tone was a little strange. It was as if she was not a normal person. She took the candied fruit and put it in her mouth. It was a little sweet. The candied fruit that did not have any additives tasted very good. She did not touch it and decided to look at the memories first. She was in a bad mood about getting married as soon as she came over and having to get married a second time in the future. Even if it was just a little bit earlier, she would not have gotten married. She threw away all the distracting thoughts in her mind and began to look at the memories of this world. Sure enough, the moment she saw the memories, she realized that her feelings were not wrong. Han did not treat her as a normal person. She was currently in Wuxin County's official Tang's manor. Her identity was official Tang's only daughter, and she was doted on by thousands. The only bad thing was that her intelligence was a little lacking. She was commonly known as a fool. However, she wasn't a fool who didn't know anything. Occasionally, she would have a little bit of intelligence. She could clearly recognize the people close to her, like her own father. She would also have some short and simple conversations. Even so, in the eyes of outsiders, she was still a fool. An idiot would always be an idiot. Outsiders wouldn't care how much of an idiot you were. Minister Tang and his wife loved each other very much. When they first got married, they did love each other for some time. However, life was not perfect, and there were regrets everywhere. When Mrs. Tang gave birth to the original owner, her body was damaged, and she only lived until the original owner was 3 years old. Mrs. Tang's only wish before she died was that Minister Tang would take good care of their only daughter. For more than 10 years, Minister Tang had always remembered his late wife's words and spoiled his only daughter like a little princess. Even if she had some flaws, she was still the apple of his eye. The case study said that in such a situation, he should have another child, preferably a male, to support the family and take care of the original owner in the future. I'm catching up with my books. Unfortunately, Minister Tang loved his late wife too much and couldn't accept another woman. Whenever he thought of his deceased wife, his heart would be filled with guilt. That was why he had never taken a concubine for so many years. In ancient times, this was a very rare thing. It could even be called a strange thing. His original plan was to adopt a child from a relative's family in the future and inherit all his family business while taking care of the original owner. Chapter 52:38. But he was afraid that if he adopted her early, the original owner would feel wronged. She would feel that he didn't want her and didn't love her. Thus, he didn't make a decision. He planned to make a decision when he was about to die. He believed that as long as he gave away his family's property, the child who inherited his family's property would take good care of his beloved daughter for the rest of her life, whether it was out of morality or reputation. In this era, people cherish their reputation. He never thought that something like this would happen. If he knew, he wouldn't have hesitated to make a decision. The original owner's tragedy began with today's wedding. Mu Shanji, a mountain man who delivered firewood to Minister Tang's family. He was a few years older than the original owner. He was different from the other mountain men. He was tall and strong. If she didn't know that he was a woodcutter, she would think that he was a young master from some family. Because he delivered firewood to Minister Tang's family every day, the original owner often saw him. When Mu Shanji was 7 or 8 years old, he delivered firewood to Minister Tang's family. Thus, they knew each other at that time. The original owner liked to see Mu Shanji and would even share her snacks with him. Minister Tang knew about this and didn't stop it, because there weren't many people who could share snacks with the original owner. It was rare for his daughter to make a friend, so he was happy. Moreover, Mu Shanji looked good. Although he was a woodcutter, he knew when to advance and retreat. He knew etiquette. Others would more or less say that his daughter was a fool. Even if she called her Miss Guo, they would still say that she was a fool behind her back. Although the original owner was a fool, she didn't like to hear people call her a fool. She wasn't a complete fool. She could tell from the tone which people had good intentions and which ones had bad intentions. Not only did Mu Shanji not call her a fool, he would also talk to her patiently. There were even a few times when he helped her scold those who mocked her as a fool. This scene was deeply engraved in her mind. From then on, she treated Mu Shanji more specially. Whenever there was something good, she would give it to Mu Shanji. This Mu Shanji was different from ordinary people. If it was some snacks or food, he would generously accept it. If it was something slightly more expensive, he would give it to Minister Tang to show that he could not accept it. Perhaps Miss Guo did not understand and insisted on giving it to him. If he didn't want it, Miss Guo would make a fuss again, so he could only take it to Minister Tang. Therefore, Squire Tang appreciated him even more. He didn't want those things back. In his opinion, they were just some small trinkets. Squire Tang just kept them and didn't need to ask him about them in the future. Mu Shanji was a very principled person. Every time he came, he would report to Zhang Xian. He would only take the things away after Zhang Xian confirmed it. Actually, he really needed these gadgets. He wanted to read books. These days, books were very expensive. He needed a lot of money to get them. Also, his mother's body wasn't in good condition. She had to see a doctor often, get medicine, and eat some good food. With the gadgets given by the original owner, his life was greatly improved. Later, as the original owner grew up, she began to pay more attention to Mu Shanji. As long as he came, her eyes would be glued to him. Minister Tang was very helpless. At the same time, he also thought that Mu Shanji was a good candidate. His daughter had reached the age of marriage. Initially, he did not consider this aspect. After all, people's hearts were fickle, and he was afraid that his daughter would be at a disadvantage. Chapter 52:39. However, Mu Shanji was different. This child was filial, knew when to advance and when to retreat. He was well-mannered and not greedy. His honesty made him like him very much. He wanted to recruit Mu Shanji as his son-in-law, but he didn't like to force people. So, he brought Mu Shanji to him and asked if he was willing to do it. If he was willing, as long as he treated his daughter well, he would be in charge of the family business after he passed away. However, he had to keep his promise and treat his daughter well. He was not a heartless person. He even promised that after Mu Shanji turned 40 years old, if the other party and his daughter did not have any children, he would allow Mu Shanji to leave a child for him. It could be said that Squire Tang's offer was very tempting, and he didn't intend to force him into a dead end. However, because Squire Tang was so nice to outsiders, Mu Shanji couldn't find an excuse to refuse. Squire Tang also asked him to go back and think about it. He didn't want to be in a hurry to refuse because they were still young. After he thought about it carefully, he would answer the question. Squire Tang's offer was so tempting that even Mu Shanji couldn't refuse. He knew that as long as he agreed immediately, his fate would be changed immediately. He would no longer have to worry about not having enough money to buy medicine for his mother. He wouldn't have to worry about his mother's illness anymore. However, if he agreed, he would be tied to Tanghua for the rest of his life, and he would never be able to be with the person he liked. Yes, he already had someone in mind. The relationship between the two was just flirting with each other. Occasionally, they would exchange letters and tokens. However, because of some things, they didn't get to the bottom of it. The reason why he didn't express his opinion to Squire Tang was that there was a difference in status between them. Not only that, but Squire Tang was already engaged and would get married when she was of age. If he said that, Squire Tang's impression of him would change immediately, and he might not want his firewood in the future. There were so many families in Wuxin County, and Squire Tang paid him the most. Therefore, he really didn't dare to refuse with the excuse that he already had someone in mind. He was afraid that Squire Tang would ask him who his sweetheart was. He didn't know how to lie yet, so he only said that he would think about it. When they got home, Mu Shanji's mother saw that Mu Shanji was confused and distressed, so she asked him what was troubling him. Mu Shanji respected his mother very much, so he repeated Minister Tang's words. After Mrs. Mu heard this, she felt that Squire Tang's conditions were too good. He had considered all aspects. She persuaded Mu Shanji to agree. It was better than chopping firewood for the rest of his life. Besides, Tanghua was not so stupid that she could not take care of herself. She was just a little slow. She knew how to recognize people close to her, and she was good-looking. He heard that the reason why she was a little foolish was because she had been in her mother's womb for a long time. Her future children probably wouldn't inherit this trait. In the worst-case scenario, didn't Minister Tang say that he would be allowed to keep his bloodline if he didn't have a descendant by the age of 40? Mu Shanji's mother couldn't bear to see Mu Shanji spend his entire life as a mountain man chopping firewood for a living. In her eyes, Mu Shanji shouldn't have to suffer such things. He should be able to live a good life. It was a pity that Mu Shanji couldn't live the life he should have. Meeting Squire Tang, who appreciated him, might be an opportunity. However, Mu Shanji said that he already had someone in mind. He was afraid that he couldn't agree to this matter. Under Mrs. Mu's questioning, he said that his sweetheart was Tanghua's cousin, Tangji. She was only 1 year younger than Tanghua. Chapter 52:40. Tang Jiyan was the daughter of Minister Tang's younger brother. Her father went missing many years ago when he went to the capital to transport goods. There was no news of him until now. There were rumors that he died in the hands of bandits. His wife heard the news and passed away soon after. When Tang Jiyan was 10 years old, she was brought to Minister Tang's house and lived there for 4 years. It was the year she came. Her poor and pitiful appearance was deeply engraved in Mu Shanji's mind, and he could not erase it. Mother Mu tried to persuade Mu Shanji to give up the idea. Tang Jiyan was engaged since she was young. It was not something he could think of. She was going to get married in a year. Mu Shanji also knew this. He was very upset, but there was nothing he could do. Mother Mu thought that it was fine whether Mu Shanji agreed or not. Now she hoped that this matter could be settled so that Mu Shanji could forget Tang Jian as soon as possible, so that there would be no trouble in the future. However, before Mu Shanji could think about it, something happened at home. It was all because Mu Mu's mother had a conflict with the villagers. She had a weak body, so she fell and hurt her waist. Mu Shanji was furious when he came back. He picked up a stick and went to the family to beat them up. However, the family was not to be trifled with. They filed a complaint against Mu Shanji. Mother Mu fell on her own accord. Everyone in the village witnessed Mu Shanji beating the family, so it was a lawsuit with no chance of winning. What awaited Mu Shanji was jail time and a huge amount of compensation, unless the family was willing to negotiate and settle it privately. The villagers did not help them because they were outsiders and did not have a close relationship with the villagers. They would not allow outsiders to bully them. Mu Shanji's mother sold everything in the house that should be sold. She went to the family to plead for mercy. Unfortunately, most of the money that Mu Shanji received was used to buy books and medicine for her. The money that they collected was less than 10 taels. How could the family agree? They insisted that Mu Shanji go to jail. Mother Mu could not let Mu Shanji go to jail. In a hurry, she thought of Minister Tang. So she quickly ran to Minister Tang's house and asked him for help. Minister Tang heard the ins and outs of the matter and decided to help Mu Shanji. With his status, he went to negotiate and even sent a sum of money as compensation. That family didn't make things difficult for him and agreed to settle the matter privately. Mu Shanji was spared from prison because he owed Father Tang a huge favor. Later, Mother Mu persuaded him to agree to Minister Tang's request and marry the original owner of the body. He promised to take good care of her for the rest of his life. Then, there was the wedding scene today. After the wedding, nothing happened between Mu Shanji and the original host. It was only because Mu Shanji bumped into Tang Jian on his way to the bridal chamber. Looking at her resentful eyes, he panicked and regretted his impulsive decision to agree to the marriage. Tang Jian had always been a strong woman. She rarely showed her weak side in front of others. However, on his wedding night, under the dim light, he could see that her eyes were red. She was probably crying secretly. On the way to the bridal chamber, whenever he thought of Tang Jian's appearance, his heart would ache. It was very painful, but it was too late for regrets. Even if he regretted it, it was impossible between them. Tang Jian was going to get married next year. There seemed to be an uncrossable river between them. After the wedding, Mu Shanji performed well and gradually gained Minister Tang's trust. Except for not consummating with the original host, everything seemed to be perfect. Chapter 52:41. Mu Shanji didn't want Minister Tang to think too much, so he pretended to consummate the marriage on the night of the wedding. After Minister Tang trusted him, he learned how to manage the family business from him. However, Tang Jian always appeared in his sight. Even if he tried to control himself, he would still look at her when no one was looking. It was the same for Tang Jian. They had feelings for each other, but they couldn't be together. It was undoubtedly torture for them. Tang Jian's father also left behind a lot of family business. When they were young, Minister Tang took care of it on behalf of him. Later, it was gradually handed over to her. Now, Tang Jian took care of it herself. Therefore, they met a lot. After a lot of contact, it was inevitable that they would have some private time. They even had some physical contact and crossed the line verbally. The relationship between the two of them went from avoiding each other to wishing that the sun would rise earlier every day so that they could meet each other. Later on, they would even create some private space, but their excuse was to discuss business. Occasionally, they would bring the original owner to deceive others. The original owner was different from normal people. She wasn't smart enough and didn't know anything about men and women. How could she find out anything when she was deceived by two smart people? Mu Shanji and Tang Jian maintained this relationship until a year later, when Tang Jian got married. Although both of them didn't want this result, they couldn't go back on their words. Tang Jian still got married under Mu Shanji's agony. He had already stopped, but Tang Jian came back less than half a year after she got married. She came back as a husband with all her husband's property. Later, he found out that her husband was in poor health. After she got married, he didn't even have the strength to consummate the marriage. He was also the only child. His parents died early, and he only had an old lady. After his death, the old lady was gone, and she was in charge. She wasn't familiar with that place, so she came back with all the property. It was inconvenient for her to live with her father, so she bought a house and lived in a more remote and quiet place. In order to see Mushanji, she often used the excuse of seeing Tanghua to come to the mansion. The flame that had been extinguished between the two of them gradually rose again. In the end, they couldn't control it, and something that shouldn't have happened. Moreover, it couldn't be stopped. That kind of relationship continued. Only Mushanji's mother knew about the changes in Mushanji. At first, she was shocked. She couldn't bear to see Mushan in pain. Later, she helped him hide it and covered for him. She even went to Tang Jian's place in person. No one suspected anything. The original owner was a fool, and everyone had deceived her. How could she know what was going on behind the scenes? Moreover, Mu Feiqi's mother had married the original Mu Qiqi and Mu Shanji and worked in the minister's mansion, so it was easy to hide it from Minister Tang. Mu Shanji had always been very careful. Even after Squire Tang's death, he still hadn't discovered this. Squire Tang's death was an accident. She didn't know where the trouble came from. That day outside the Mushin Mountains, a group of bandits rushed into her mansion and killed everyone they saw. Squire Tang heard the noise outside and knew that they might not be able to escape. So he asked Honor to take Tanghua and escape through the small door. There was a carriage at the small door. If they were lucky, they should be able to escape with their lives. The original Mu Qiqi was taken to the carriage in a daze. Honor urged the coachman to go quickly. But at the critical moment, the original Mu Qiqi thought of Mu Shanji. She didn't know why, but her mind seemed to be suddenly clear. She quickly asked the coachman to change the direction and go to find Mu Shanji. She was afraid that the bandits would catch up with them, so she asked Honor to take the coachman to find Mu Shanji. But Honor didn't want to and wanted to follow her, so the coachman drove the carriage. The original Mu Qiqi and Honor were killed by the bandits who chased after them. Mu Shanji escaped in time and survived. He took care of the affairs of the minister's mansion and sold his family property. In order to escape, he took Tang Jian and Mu Feiqi's mother far away. Later, he found the mystery of his identity and recovered his identity. He went through the difficulties hand in hand with Tang Jian. In the end, the two lovers got married. Chapter 52-42. The red candles in the room were crying. Mu Shanji, who was dealing with the guests outside, was already half drunk. He was being supported by the servants to the bridal chamber. When passing through the long corridor, the half-drunk Mu Shanji saw Tang Jian, who stopped to make way for him. At that moment, all his drunkenness disappeared. Tang Jian was standing there alone, but he couldn't stop in front of her. He could only pass by her with the help of the servants. He couldn't help but look at her. The light was dim, but he could see that Tang Jian was sad at this time. Her eyes were red. She must have just cried. Mu Shanji was full of regret. He regretted that he agreed to this marriage. Unfortunately, after the ceremony and the wine, he was going to the bridal chamber. At this time, he was already the son-in-law of Minister Tang. It was impossible for him and Tang Jian to be together. No one noticed the moment when Tang Jian and Mu Shanji looked at each other with longing and reluctance. In the eyes of the servants. In the servants' eyes, Tang Jian made way for Mu Shanji as the groom. After all, they had to walk through the long corridor. Mu Shanji came to the bridal chamber with heartache. Looking at the room full of red candles and the burning red candles, there was no joy in his heart. Under the guidance of the servant girl, he finished all the necessary procedures. Only Tanghua and Mu Shanji were left in the room. Brother Shanji, Tanghua saw Mu Shanji in a daze. She called him according to the tone of the original owner. Her tone was a bit dull, but it was obvious that the owner of the voice should be very fond of this person. Mu Shanji was indeed awakened. He looked at Tanghua, who was sitting obediently by the bed. Seeing her clear eyes, he suddenly felt guilty. He only felt very confused, but he still forced a smile. He reached out and touched Tangwa's head. Then he pulled her to the table and pointed at the candied fruits on the table. Guo, are you hungry? If you are hungry, eat something. You can rest after eating. I am a little hungry. Tangwa didn't refuse. The original owner did this. She sat on the stool and ate something. She glanced at Mu Shanji, who was still in a dilemma. Then, she saw Mu Shanji staring at the bed. He bit his finger and dripped a few drops of blood on it. Then, he quickly spread out the quilt like a thief. Is it good? After finishing what he wanted to do, Mu Shanji came to Tangwa's side and sat on another stool. Eat more if you like. If it's not enough, I'll ask someone to get more. Tangwa nodded gently. She thought to herself, Mu Shanji is really impolite. Does he think he's the owner of this place? He entertained her as if he was entertaining a guest. For the time being, she did not care too much about it. This body was indeed a little hungry, so she had to hurry up and eat something. When Tangwa finished eating, Mu Shanji coaxed her to sleep. He covered each of them with a quilt. He whispered to Tangwa, Guo, let's keep a secret, okay? Secret? Yes, a secret. Mu Shanji turned sideways and said seriously, it's a secret between us. I won't tell anyone, not even my father-in-law. Only you and I know. Yes, a secret that only you and I know. Mu Shanji repeated and then said, from now on, we are husband and wife. We are the closest people in this world, so we have to keep this a secret. In the future, no matter who asks, even my father-in-law, Honor, you can't tell them what happened in the room. Chapter 52-43. Tangwa blinked and pondered. She didn't seem to understand, but at the same time, she seemed to understand. Finally, she spat out two words, sure. Because the original owner was mentally handicapped, Minister Tang didn't ask anyone to teach her some of the necessary procedures. In Minister Tang's opinion, Mu Shanji was a good person. He had been good to Tangwa since they were young. He was going to marry Tangwa, so he could teach her in this aspect. After all, the original owner wasn't a normal person. He was really afraid that if someone else taught her, it would scare her and leave a psychological shadow. Hearing Tangwa's answer, Mu Shanji was relieved. Yes, sure. It's sure to tell others, so you can't tell anyone. In the future, if anyone asks about what happened in the room, don't tell them. You have to keep it a secret. A secret. Tangwa pretended to remember this word and then nodded heavily. Keep it a secret. It's Brother Shanji's secret. Mu Shanji was finally relieved. At this moment, he felt a little guilty. He used Tangwa's trust to make her do this. He dared to do it because he knew the original owner. She listened to him very much. She had been like this for a long time. As long as she listened to him, she wouldn't tell anyone about this matter. He already had Tang Jian in his heart. He really couldn't accept another person at the moment. Perhaps after a long time, his feelings for Tang Jian would slowly fade and he would start over with Tangwa. Mu Shanji thought so and said, you're tired today. Go to sleep. I'll take you there tomorrow. Tangwa closed her eyes and went to sleep. In fact, she entered the group to tell the story of this world to her friends. She didn't have time to care about Mu Shanji's entanglement. This person actually had someone in his heart. How could he have the nerve to agree to this matter? It was done, but he couldn't accept it. In the end, Mu Shanji couldn't resist the temptation. He was a bit of a bitch. Margaret, I'm not in it again. I know that the creator of the world has never stopped targeting me. Shangguan Yungo. I feel like I'm also targeted by the heavenly Tao. Since I fell into that secret realm, one strange world followed another. It was simply endless. It wasn't easy to get out of a place where yin and yang were reversed, but in the end, we still couldn't get out. Marguerite was no longer sad. Margaret, where are you? What strange things have happened this time? Shangguan Yungu. It's a place without light. It's dark everywhere. All humans live underground. As for what exactly was going on, he would have to investigate it later. He had just arrived, so he had not figured it out yet. Margaret, what an unlucky child. Do you want me to say a few words of blessing to you? Shangguan Yungu. Senior Margaret knows how to give blessings? Will it become a curse's curse? He was worried. Margaret. No wonder she to say the words to say. After confirming that everyone in the group was fine, Tangwa chatted with them. After watching them play for a while, she left and went asleep. To the S to the end. TT to be 8, 2. T to say to him to be a, T to have a. Normal T halves. S. She. Since things had come to this, there was no other way. He could only continue down this path. Mu Shanji couldn't sleep for the whole night. Every time he closed his eyes, he would think of Tang Jian, whom he saw in the corridor. When he finally fell asleep, he would dream of Tang Jian crying sadly in his arms. Chapter 52-44. Tangwa had a good night's sleep. When she woke up, she saw that Mu Shanji had dark circles under his eyes. Obviously, he didn't sleep well. She shouted to the outside, "Honair, Honair." Honair quickly came in with some maids with water. She helped Tangwa dress, and some maids helped Mu Shanji dress. Mu Shanji was still a little uncomfortable, but because he didn't sleep well, he was not in good spirits. So, he asked the maids to help him. If it was in normal times, he would definitely refuse. He did it himself, and he really didn't have the energy to fight for this. Honair helped Tangwa dress, wash up, and then dress up. She whispered in her ear, "Miss, did you rest well last night? Are you tired?" She had seen the old maid tidying up the bed just now, so she asked. Tangwa looked at herself in the mirror. She was very satisfied with her appearance. After a while, she answered Honair word by word, "It's a secret." Honair was stunned. "A secret?" She asked in a low voice about last night's situation. Unexpectedly, Tangwa answered, "I can't tell you." Honair understood immediately. She nodded with a smile and didn't ask more. It seemed that Miss was not bullied. So, other things were not important. She dressed Tangwa. Next, Tangwa and Mu Shanji went to see Minister Tang. In the hall, Mu Shanji saw Tang Jian. Tang Jian stood quietly aside. She looked well-behaved. She only glanced at Mu Shanji and then lowered her head slightly, as if it had nothing to do with her. Mu Shanji also glanced at her hurriedly and quickly looked away. He continued the process of the second day of the wedding, bowing to his father-in-law and toasting. After the process was over, the whole family sat together for breakfast. There were 4 people at the table: Minister Tang, Tangwa, Mu Shanji, and Tang Jian. Tangwa was the happiest person at this meal. Seeing that she was fine and looked good, Minister Tang stroked his beard with satisfaction. "Guar, eat more if you like. My appetite this morning is better than before." Tangwa looked up and nodded at Minister Tang with a big smile. She glanced at the table and picked up some food for Minister Tang. Squire Tang laughed happily and immediately ate the money that Tangwa gave him with a smile. Even if his daughter was a little mentally handicapped, she knew how to call him daddy and doted on him. That was enough. This huge family business was enough for his daughter to live a happy life. Tangwa didn't forget about Mu Shanji either. After all, she had to maintain her character and act as a silly girl who only cared about Mu Shanji. She picked up some food for Mu Shanji. Mu Shanji suddenly felt a great pressure. He saw Tang Jian looking at him with a smile. He saw Tang Jian trembling slightly and pursing her lips. He only felt that the food in his bowl was a hot potato. He knew that if he ate it, he would hurt Tang Jian's heart. But at this moment, he had no choice but to eat. Tangwa saw Mu Shanji eat it and give him more money. She saw that Tang Jian was uncomfortable and almost couldn't maintain her character. She directly rolled her eyes. She found that Mu Shanji was eating with difficulty and maintaining a smile on his face. He looked happy, but in fact, his hands were clenched into fists under the table and were trembling slightly. If he liked her so much, why did he agree to marry her? These people, she really didn't understand. They were so greedy and wanted everything. Tangwa kept picking up food for Mu Shanji in the morning. He ate until he was full. Peak. Chapter 52-45. It was good food, but because Tang Jian was watching, he couldn't taste it at all. Minister Tang ate more happily. Tangwa also put food in his bowl several times. which were all his favorites. Mu Shanji knew it was dangerous for him to go down, so he decided to see Tang Jian less. Tang Jian was going to get married a year later. It was impossible for them to be together, so it was better for everyone to see each other less. After breakfast, he took Tangwei out to play. When Tangwei was done playing, he went back to his room to read. Minister Tang was indeed a good person. Seeing that Mu Shanji liked to read so much, he asked the servants to clean up a room for Mu Shanji's study. He also asked the servants to copy many books and put them in the room. In this way, except for meals, Mu Shanji basically didn't see Tang Jian. His mind was filled with books, so he didn't think about it for the time being. Finally, he felt less sad. Tang Jian was also avoiding meeting Mu Shanji. Now that she had taken over her father's business, she had to go out every day to look after the shops and check the accounts. She was so busy that she didn't even have time to eat in the mansion. The only one who was more comfortable was Tangwa. Mu Shanji had nothing to do with her, so she didn't have to do anything. She ate and drank all day, and asked the system to monitor the mansion to understand the situation. Other than that, there was nothing else to do. Mu Shanji's mother had been arranged to work in the mansion. At this time, she had become close with some servants. Because of her identity, the servants in the mansion were very obedient to her. She had observed Mu Shanji's mother's means. She was indeed not an ordinary person. She was very skilled in managing people, and she definitely had seen a lot of things. She was very calm when she saw those gold, silver, and jade in front of her, and there was no greed in her eyes. Mu Shanji's mother fled to Wuxin County with Mu Shanji. The massacre of the Tang family was also implicated by this mother and son pair. There were still some years before that incident, so there was no need to rush. She needed to let Minister Tang know in advance that Mu Shanji was not as good as he thought. She was a fool now, so she could only use a fool's way to let her father know. It would be troublesome to become smart all of a sudden. It would easily arouse suspicion and jealousy. The people here were not fools. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. Mu Shanji's performance made Minister Tang very satisfied. One day, after playing with Tangwa for a while, he was about to go to the study to read when he was stopped by Minister Tang's men. After he went there, he realized that Minister Tang wanted him to learn from him. Father-in-law, the family business in my hands will be handed over to you and Guo sooner or later. Guo can't do these things. I also hope that she can live a carefree life. You can only worry about these things. This time, Mu Shanji did not refuse. He still preferred to be busy. Whenever he was free, Tangwa would pester him to play. If it wasn't flying a kite, it would be playing hide and seek. It was really boring for a normal person to do these things with a fool every day. Therefore, Mu Shanji spent most of his time learning how to manage the family business from Squire Tang. The original owner was actually very easy to coax. As long as he patiently said a few words to her, she would be very obedient and play with the maids by herself. She would not cause trouble for anyone. Mu Shanji coaxed Tangwa in this way. Tangwa agreed obediently according to the original owner's temperament. While learning from Minister Tang, Mu Shanji and Tang Jian spent more time together. The seedling that had sprouted could not be extinguished. Chapter 52-46. Mu Shanji was indeed very smart. Under Squire Tang's guidance, he could draw inferences about other things. Squire Tang felt that he had picked up a treasure, so he trained him even more and gave him more power. After 2 months of learning, Mu Shanji handled some things by himself. Squire Tang didn't follow him anymore. Tangwa didn't interfere with anything for the time being. If she didn't give the two a chance to cheat, how could she get hold of them? If her father knew that there was something going on between them, everything would be nipped in the bud. How boring would that be? By then, with her father's love for his daughter, he would most likely kick Mu Shanji out of the house. Then, it would have nothing to do with them. When Tang Jian became a widow, they would have a chance to be together openly. And now that Mu Shanji had learned so much, he might be able to start a new life after being kicked out. Even if she didn't have the capital, Tang Jian did. Who could say anything about that? Even if her father felt uncomfortable, he wouldn't pursue the past for the sake of Tang Jian's father. Tangwa looked at Squire Tang and handed more things to Mu Shanji. In just half a year, He didn't care much about things. He just didn't check the account book for 3 months. He was retired and spent more time at home playing with Tanghua. Father, the kite is flying so high. Tanghua was flying a kite with Squire Tang. She couldn't help it. The original owner loved flying kites. When her father was free, he would fly a kite with her every day. He even made all kinds of kites himself. Not only that, he would take her to the street to buy small things every day. System, host, I feel that you are being forced to open your business. Tanghua, what do you want to say? I want to say that you still have to endure. Endure until Tang Jian gets married and becomes a widow. Then, the two of them will hook up. That's the end. Tanghua, if you didn't mention this, I would have forgotten. Give me the information of Tang Jian's fiancé. Although it's ancient times and there's no internet, according to the information we have, you should be able to cover that area, right? System. That's not a problem, but it will take a long time. It's okay. I'm not in a hurry. You just need to see what kind of illness he has and how he is. If he's not a scourge, I'll do a good deed and save his life. Tanghua sat at the side, eating snacks. Seeing her father flying a kite for her, a smile unknowingly overflowed. But living a long life isn't necessarily a good thing. He has to wear a green hat. System. Dear host, have you forgotten that you are wearing a hat of this color? Tanghua. System. Dear host, I'll go investigate that matter first. As soon as the system finished speaking, it slipped away. He also felt that he was floating, so he quickly slipped away when the host wasn't paying attention. He didn't want her to come back to her senses and say that she was his number again. This was the pain of his birth. After the system slipped away, Tanghua continued to fly the kite. Since her father liked to play, she would let him play. He would take good care of his body so that he would not be angered in the future. Counselor Tang was especially satisfied recently. He felt that this was the happiest moment in his life. It was a pity that his late wife couldn't see all of this. However, he didn't know that at this moment, Mu Shanji and Tang Jian were sitting in a private room of a tea house, talking. The two looked at each other with eyes full of affection. After a moment of silence, Mu Shanji spoke first. Don't be too tired. You look like you've lost a lot of weight. Peak. Chapter 52-47. Tang Jian could still pretend to be strong. Even if she met Mu Shanji every day, as long as he didn't speak, she could pretend that she didn't know anything and try to forget that feeling. Unexpectedly, the boss left early today, and they had a chance to be alone. Mu Shanji took the initiative to talk to her and asked her to take care of herself. This sentence instantly broke all of her strength. Endless grievances rose in her heart, and her eyes became red, containing the tears that she tried hard not to let fall. Seeing this, Mu Shanji's heart also tightened. He couldn't be indifferent to Tang Jian's appearance. In the end, he helped her wipe her tears. I'm sorry, Mu Shanji said softly. It's just that we're not meant to be together. Everything hasn't happened yet. Why can't we change our fate? Tang Jian said angrily. If Mu Shanji had the courage, she would have broken off the engagement. Even if she was scolded by her uncle and looked down upon by the world. As long as Mu Shanji dared, she dared. However, Mu Shanji had never shown that. He always revealed that there was an insurmountable gap between them. They were meant to be together, but not meant to be together. She hated to hear such words the most. She felt inexplicably wronged. The more Tang Jian thought about it, the more she couldn't help but wipe her tears. Mu Shanji panicked and hurriedly wiped her tears. What's wrong? Have you encountered any difficulties recently? Tell me. If I can help you, I'll definitely do so. Tang Jian looked at him with tears in her eyes, feeling even more wronged. She was sad here, but he didn't know what was going on. This person had never thought that there might be a future between them. At this point, there was really no chance between them. There was no need for her to say so much to him. I'll go first. Tang Jian wiped her tears and pretended that sand had gotten into her eyes. She left Mu Shanji behind her. Mu Shanji wanted to chase after her, but Tang Jian had already walked out of the door. He was afraid that if he got too close, he would be seen by others, so he watched her leave. Tang Jian felt it and looked back at him with a sad smile. Mu Shanji's heart tightened, and he really wanted to chase after her. For the next few days, Mu Shanji met Tang Jian. Tang Jian didn't say a word to him except for the necessary words. Her attitude was cold and indifferent, which made him very uncomfortable. Mu Shanji couldn't accept this, so he took the initiative to create an opportunity to be alone with Tang Jian again. Tang Jian wanted to leave, but this time he quickly stopped her. Tang Jian struggled and tried to leave. Mu Shanji pulled her back and hugged her tightly. She couldn't get away. "What's wrong with you? Why have you been ignoring me for the past few days?" Mu Shanji did not like Tang Jian when she was like this. He was also afraid that she would treat him like a stranger. Tang Jian sneered. "How do you want me to pay attention to you? You are now my cousin-in-law. How do you want me to pay attention to you?" Mu Shanji opened his mouth, but he couldn't refute. "Mu Shanji, let me go. Since you know that there's no future between us, why are you blocking my way? In half a year, I will be getting married. If someone sees us like this, it won't be as simple as gossip. Your reputation and mine will be ruined." Mu Shanji didn't let her go this time. He said firmly, "I've already made arrangements. No one will find out." The top. Chapter 52-48. You've been ignoring me recently. You're even more indifferent than when we first met. I feel very uneasy if I don't figure out what's going on. Jian, what's wrong with you? Why don't you tell me what's going on? Tang Jian didn't struggle anymore. Her voice was still sarcastic. She looked at Mu Shanji and said, "So what if I tell you? Will our relationship change?" Mu Shanji, it was the best chance for us to change everything, but you never thought about it. How can I not be sad? Since Mu Shanji said so, Tang Jian couldn't hold it in anymore. At that time, you were still Mu Shanji, not the son-in-law of the Tang family. I was only engaged, but not married. If you told me that you're willing to be with me, can't we be together? At most, our reputation will be damaged, but we can still be together. But you didn't think about it at all. You gave up on our relationship and chose my silly sister Tang. You obviously didn't have any feelings for her, but you still accepted my uncle's proposal to marry her and become the son-in-law of the Tang family. It's fine if you act like this, but I can clearly see your feelings for me from your eyes. Look at me. I'm full of regret and reluctance. Why? You've already made your choice. Why did you show me such an expression to disturb my mood? You know that I can't turn a blind eye to these things. I'll be moved and hope will be born. But if we really do something, what will happen between us? Tang Jian's words made Mu Shanji speechless. He really regretted it. But what Tang Jian said, even if it was reversed, he still felt that it was a little inappropriate. If they couldn't get one, their reputation would be ruined. There would be no place for them in Wuxin County in the future. His mother would also be implicated. He regretted that he couldn't be with Tang Jian. Only then did he realize that his heart was filled with her. He could only apologize. Tang Jian pushed him away this time, and he didn't stop her. However, in the future, he secretly treated Tang Jian well. He trained his confidant, who was a servant he bought by accident, to help him do some trivial things. He had arranged for this confidant to take care of Tang Jian's affairs. Despite her stubbornness, Tang Jian accepted Mu Shanji's kindness, and her attitude gradually softened. Tangwa often received the system telling her about the two's behavior. At this time, the two did not do anything excessive. At most, they looked at each other affectionately. Occasionally, when Tangwa was sad, Mu Shanji would wipe her tears. System. Dear host, the information on Tang Jian's fiancé has been investigated. Do you want to see it now? This person wasn't a bad person. Rather, he was a little unlucky. His illness was from his mother's womb. This kind of illness, let alone in the ancient world, even in the modern world, if not properly recuperated, it would be fatal. As for his character, there's no problem. This person doesn't usually go out. It's just that his body is too weak, so it's even less likely for him to do evil. He's a relatively simple person. Got it. In that case, I'll find an opportunity to save his life. However, His existence cannot prevent those two from rekindling their old flame. Tanghua was eating snacks. Squire Tang had been asking people to study these things when he was free. Vertex. Chapter 52-49. In the evening, Mu Shanji came back. As usual, Tanghua followed the original owner's character and waited for him at the gate. Her eyesight was very good. She saw with her own eyes that after Mu Shanji saw her, his smile disappeared, and his expression became serious, as if something big had happened. Because he had mended his relationship with Tang Jian these days, he really didn't want to deal with Tanghua anymore. Grab and seize. He found that as long as he looked serious, dignified, and busy, Tanghua wouldn't disturb him, as if she knew he had something important to do. In order not to deal with Tanghua, he often showed this expression in front of Tanghua. Tanghua imitated the appearance of the original owner so well that no one could see the disdain in her heart. As time went by, Mu Shanji became more and more perfunctory. This person purely took advantage of the original owner's kindness to achieve his own purpose. He was willing to get married, but now he didn't want to deal with her. He probably thought she was annoying in his heart. Brother Shanji, are you hungry? Tanghua's expression was still the same as before. No one could tell that there was something wrong with her. Her tone was sweet. Mu Shanji looked tired and nodded to Tanghua. Delicious food, Tanghua said and trotted in, happily leading the way for him. Mu Shanji also followed in. At first, he felt guilty when he did this once or twice, but he gradually got used to it. He secretly swore in his heart that although he couldn't give Tanghua love, he would definitely make her carefree for the rest of her life. He would win the literature prize. Thinking of this, the guilt in his heart lessened even more. He felt that as long as Tanghua's life was smooth and safe, he would complete the task he promised Minister Tang. Mu Shanji kept hinting to himself and imagining. At this time, he didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, he felt that sometimes Tanghua was a little annoying. Tanghua felt it, but she was an idiot with a mental defect now. She shouldn't feel it, so she had to pretend nothing happened. At the dining table, she kept putting food on Mu Shanji's plate. Her face was full of smiles, as if she never knew how to be sad. This made Mu Shanji feel a wave of irritation. Because Minister Tang was also there, he ate all the food in the bowl. The corners of Tanghua's mouth curled up as she continued to fill Mu Shanji's bowl with food. Soon, his bowl was full again. Since she knew that he was feeling uncomfortable, she would try her best to make him feel uncomfortable as well. This person was really strange and changed very quickly. After all, he was still a heartless person. When the original owner was in danger, she suddenly became sober. The first thing she thought of was to tell him to escape. As for him, he managed to escape with his life. Later on, after he regained his identity, he gave up on avenging the dozens of people of the Tang clan for various reasons. Mu Shanji was an ungrateful wretch. It was just that he didn't show it on his face. Brother Shanji, eat. Tanghua not only put food in his bowl, but also said something to attract his and Minister Tang's attention. Minister Tang was happy to see this, but Mu Shanji didn't dare to show his emotions. He had to pretend to eat happily, but in fact, he was very uncomfortable. He still felt that Tanghua was a little annoying. Chapter 52-50. When the two returned to the room, there was no one else in the room. Mu Shanji was finally relieved. Brother Shanji. Tanghua looked at Mu Shanji with a smile. Mu Shanji was very annoyed by her ignorant look. He couldn't help but think of Tang Jian, who was very sensible at a very young age. He couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Even though Tanghua was a fool, she was pampered since she was young. But Jian was different. Her mother also died early. Her father was always busy and seldom at home. She was very lonely at a young age. When she was older, her father had an accident. She didn't even see his body. She had to live under someone else's roof. Now she had to take care of all the businesses by herself. It was simply life forcing Jian to go. Her sensible look really made people feel sorry for her. Jian was so good. Why was her fate so tragic? Brother Shanji, are you listening? Tanghua found that Mu Shanji was in a daze. She didn't know what he was thinking, so she pushed him. Mu Shanji came back to his senses. He pretended to be very tired and rubbed his forehead. What's the matter, Guo? Can we fly a kite tomorrow? Before they got married, Mu Shanji often flew kites with the original host. It was not that he wanted to play with the original host. At that time, the original host played with Tang Jian. Mu Shanji had an ulterior motive. After getting married, Mu Shanji seemed to have lost this function. He didn't want to fly a kite with Tanghua. I'm afraid not. Isn't it enough to have father-in-law with Guo? Of course, Mu Shanji didn't want to go. If Xian heard about it, she would be sad again. There are a lot of things to do during the day tomorrow. It's all father-in-law's orders. If I fly a kite with you, I can't do anything. Otherwise, father-in-law will be unhappy and think that I'm useless. Let the maid and father-in-law accompany you tomorrow, okay? When I come back, I'll bring you the best shortbread. The original host liked to play and eat. Mu Shanji's words had indeed attracted her attention. She hurriedly agreed. Tanghua was too lazy to deal with him. She just went through the process of setting up her character every day. After that, she washed up and went to bed with the help of the maidservants. Mu Shanji didn't dare to sleep in another room. He just lay on the side with his clothes on. It was really difficult for him. Late at night, Tanghua saw that Mu Shanji had fallen asleep. She opened the window and the cold wind blew in. She pulled the quilt tightly and fell asleep comfortably, letting Mu Shanji be blown by the cold wind. Sure enough, when she woke up early in the morning, she saw that Mu Shanji's face was not very good. Dear host, there is actually a high risk of death for ancient people who catch a cold. He has the life of a cockroach. Don't worry, he definitely won't die. System. Actually, he deserves it. He's always doing things to disgust Madam Host, so he got a cold. He deserves it. Mu Shanji had been coughing since the morning. Not long after he went out, his head started to heat up. He had no choice but to go back and ask the doctor to take a look. Everyone in the mansion was busy. Tanghua pretended to be very worried. After a while, she saw Tang Jian come in. Tang Jian asked her, Sister Guo, I heard that cousin's husband caught a cold. Are you okay? Tanghua didn't answer immediately. After all, she was a fool. She didn't even need to answer some questions. She only needed to stare at the other person in confusion. Naturally, Han would answer for her. Miss Tang is fine. It's just that the husband is seriously ill. The doctor said that he needs to rest in bed. We don't know when the fever will go away. The peak. Chapter 52-51. Because Mu Shanji had a cold and fever, he was worried that his illness would spread to Tanghua, so he was arranged to recuperate in another room. Tanghua was happy to do so. At this time, Mu Shanji had already fainted. If he knew, he would be very happy. Tang Jian was actually very anxious, but she couldn't go to see Mu Shanji's situation. She could only stay with Tanghua and talk to her about some incoherent things. She was very anxious when she saw that Tanghua didn't go to see Mu Shanji. Originally, she thought that if Tanghua went to see Mu Shanji, she could also go and see the situation. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to achieve her goal. But she didn't want to give up, so she took the initiative to ask, Sister Guo, how is my cousin-in-law now? Aren't you going to stay by his side? Tang Jian asked politely. Even Han didn't realize that something was wrong. Not to mention other things, in terms of shrewdness, there were few people of the same age who could compare with Tang Jian. If it was too complicated, the original owner couldn't understand. She could only look at the other person in confusion and ask Han for help. Every time this happened, Han was responsible for answering these questions. The minister is worried that Miss is sick, so he asked you to visit him after he recovers. There are people watching him, so he will be fine. Han replied. She thought that Tang Jian was just asking casually. Tang Jian was helpless. She said calmly, I didn't think of this at the moment. Sister Guo usually pays too much attention to my cousin-in-law. I forgot about this. Then I won't stay any longer. I have a lot of things to do today. She couldn't wait here, so she could only leave. As soon as she went out, Tang Jian asked someone to inquire about Mu Shanji's situation. She was relieved when she learned that Mu Shanji's mother was also waiting by his side. Then she called her confidant and asked him to find a way to get close to Mu Shanji. She couldn't be at ease if she didn't know the news about him. Unfortunately, this was the minister's mansion. She couldn't see him even if she wanted to. She was afraid that people would gossip if they knew. Mu Shanji had a fever for 2 days. His whole body was in a daze from the fever. Finally, he survived. The doctor also felt that it was strange. Logically speaking, it was so serious that he might not be able to survive. In the end, he blamed it on Mu's strong body. "Young master, the doctor said that you might not make it. You really scared me to death." Mu Shanji stopped. "How many days have I been sick?" "Young master, you've been feverish for 2 days, and you've lost consciousness due to the fever." Speaking of this, the servant looked around the room. At this moment, there were only him and Mu Shanji in the room. He took 2 steps forward and said in a low voice, "Miss Tang is very worried about you. She has sent people to ask about you several times. In the past 2 days, you've lost a lot of weight. Because of this, you've lost a lot of appetite." Mu Shanji's heart ached when he heard that. "Did you tell her that I woke up? Everyone in the residence knows about it." "Young master, don't worry. Miss Tang even asked someone to send you some soup. She made it herself." The manservant Guelu hurriedly opened the food box beside him. "I told the others that this was bought from outside. Young master really missed it, so no one doubted it. Young master, please drink as much as you want." Mu Shanji held the bowl and was satisfied with Gueli's cleverness. "I will reward you later." Mu Shanji drank the chicken soup, and the image of Tang Jiyan appeared in his mind. When he was almost done, Tangwa came with Han Er. Han Er was carrying a food box in her hand. "Brother Shanji." Tangwa pretended to be very happy and urged Han Er to take out the porridge that nourished the stomach. "Father said to eat this." Mu Shanji was full from the chicken soup, and he didn't like porridge. He said, "I don't have an appetite now." He rubbed his eyebrows. Guelu was very smart and quickly said, "Miss Han Er, young master just woke up for a while and ate some soup that was bought outside. He should be tired now. Put down the porridge first and wait for young master to wake up before eating." Mu Shanji followed Gueli's words and lay down. Han Er felt that Tangwa was a little disappointed and comforted her. "Miss, it's young master's body that hasn't recovered yet. He doesn't have any extra energy. He needs to rest and sleep more to recover." Oh. After Han Er comforted Tangwa, Tangwa followed and left. She looked back and finally looked at Gueli's face. "Feed it to Brother Shanji." Guelu hurriedly agreed. But after Tangwa and Han Er left, Mu Shanji said, "Guelu, you can eat that or throw it away. I'm already full." "It's good that I haven't eaten yet." Guelu took the porridge and ate it. He didn't expect it to be so salty. Digression. Mobile version website. Chapter 52:52. Guelu, what's wrong? Mu Shanji asked when he saw Guelu spit out the soup. He was still immersed in the sweetness of the soup that Tang Jian made for him and didn't notice that Guelu muttered, "So salty." Guelu said with a bitter face, "Young master, the soup is so salty." "Salty?" Mu Shanji was puzzled. Did the chef put too much salt? If you can't finish it, throw it away. Do it secretly and don't let anyone see. Mu Shanji suddenly felt that this kind of careful life was not as free as chopping firewood in the mountains. Although he couldn't make much money in the past, at least he was free. He could go wherever he wanted and do whatever he wanted. If he didn't like to eat something, he wouldn't eat it. If he wanted to throw away something, he wasn't afraid of being found out. But now it was different. Since he lived in the mansion, he became careful. He was afraid that he would make his father-in-law angry. Mu Shanji looked at Gueli's bitter face and felt a little relieved. It was much better than before. Buying Guelu should be the right thing to do. However, it was obviously not enough to only have Guelu as his confidant. He had to train a few more useful people so that he wouldn't have to be sneaky when pouring soup. Guelu told Mu Shanji that he was going to throw away the soup. When he looked at the soup, His face was full of disgust. Ever since he had been with Mu Shanji, he had gained Mu Shanji's trust. He had never eaten anything so disgusting. Not long after, Gui Lu returned to the room and whispered to Mu Shanji, "Young master, when I went to return the food box, I heard from Han that the soup was made by the young miss. No wonder it was so salty. The young miss has never done any rough work, and that it's not strange. Han is too much. Young master has just recovered, and she let the young miss mess around." The reason why Gui Lu dared to say this was because he knew that Mu Shanji didn't like Tanghua. He didn't know the cause and effect of the mansion. Because Minister Tang was strict, the servants didn't dare to talk about Mu Shanji marrying into the family. They were giving him face. It could be said that many people in the Wuxin County were envious of Mu Shanji's good fortune. Gui Lu took it for granted that Mu Shanji must have his own difficulties to marry into the family. Otherwise, he should have married the person he liked, his cousin. I see. Mu Shanji understood. Gua is father-in-law's only daughter. If she wants to do something, how can a maid like Han stop her? Mu Shanji was not touched by Tanghua's soup. He only felt annoyed. Fortunately, he was full and did not try it. Otherwise, he would be the one to taste the salty soup. Then in the future, when young miss sends soup over, I will help young master deal with it, Gui Lu said. After this, young master will have to rest for a while. Just now, I heard from Han that young miss has been very interested in this area recently. She might even send him a few more times. Mu Shanji nodded casually. Sure, give me the book. Mu Shanji did not know that his every move was being monitored by the system. Originally, Tanghua asked the system to monitor this because she wanted to see Mu Shanji suffer. She didn't expect Tang Jian to care so much about him and let him eat until he was full. Hearing the conversation between Gui Lu and him, Tanghua didn't know what to say at this time. She really couldn't tell what kind of person this person was. Tomorrow, I will watch him drink. System. Host. Good job. Chapter 52-53. In the afternoon, Tanghua went to see Mu Shanji again. She couldn't say what she wanted to say in a hurry, at least on the surface. But Han had been by her side since she was young. On the way here, Tanghua said some words to her intermittently. Han already understood what Tanghua wanted to ask Mu Shanji. So, when she saw Tanghua staring at her, Han immediately said, Young master, what Miss means is, do you like today's soup? Earlier, I saw Gui Lu go to return the food box, and the soup inside was finished. Young master, you should like it, right? In order to make this soup, Miss woke up early in the morning and pestered the cook to teach her. It took her a few hours, and Miss was so tired that she was sweating profusely. Mu Shanji wanted to complain in his heart. After all, she had a precious body. She usually lived like a princess, and it took her so much effort to make a pot of salty soup that was inedible. But he did show a slight smile on his face. I like it very much. Thank you, Guer. He couldn't say that the soup wasn't good, and he didn't drink it at all, right? Tanghua saw Mu Shanji putting on an act and couldn't help but think that this person was very hypocritical. If it wasn't good, he could just say it directly. Her father wouldn't do anything if he knew. Her father was really not harsh. Ever since Mu Shanji came to the minister's mansion, her father had always been considerate of his self-esteem. He was so good to him, mostly because he wanted his daughter to live a good life, and hoped that Mu Shanji would not forget his original intention. Another part was because Mu Shanji was more outstanding, and he wanted to nurture him. But this Mu Shanji really didn't remember his kindness. Mu Shanji saw Tanghua's happy smile and felt that he didn't do anything wrong. Anyway, he only needed to say a few beautiful words to coax her. He won't drink the soup. Tanghua knew what he was thinking. She said, Brother Shanji, there's more tomorrow. Mu Shanji's smile froze for a moment, then he smiled and said, Guer, don't work too hard. Leave these things to the servants. I don't want you to be tired. I'm not tired, Tanghua emphasized. She really didn't do anything. She was the one who directed the whole process, and the cook was operating. In the end, when the cook wasn't paying attention, she sprinkled a handful of salt in. She used the salt stored in the system space. In ancient times, salt was very precious. If a large amount of it suddenly disappeared, it would cause problems. Mu Shanji didn't want to deal with Tanghua, so he pretended to be tired. Gui Lu was smart and quickly found an excuse. After Honor explained, Tanghua agreed to leave. In fact, she didn't like dealing with Mu Shanji. Now, she had to go through the process to pave the way for the future.